Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobook. He used superhuman strength to conquer all of American comics. 021 School Incident. Morning, Godotkin University student apartments. A beam of golden sunlight spilled in through the drawn curtains, gradually illuminating the previously closed apartment. The miniskirts, boots, and even lace underwear scattered all over the floor hinted at the intensity of last night's events. A subtle tickling sensation came from the tip of his nose and neck. Ross opened his sleepy eyes and saw Kate wearing a white shirt, lying on his chest like a golden cat. His smooth, long golden hair spread out like dappled gold, its fragrance filling the pillow, with a few strands falling on his face and neck. Los looked down at the girl's tired, sleeping face. Last night, 6 hours were almost not enough, and in the end, he spent hundreds of millions to successfully persuade Kate. Ross stated directly that he had no intention of dating at the moment, but since he had started a company, Kate could join as his secretary. Kate agreed. At this point, Los had all the necessary conditions to take control of the school. After removing the sleepy golden cat from his body, Los got out of bed, took his new clothes, and went into the bathroom to take a shower. After showering, Los was drying his hair with a towel when he heard a knock on the dormitory door. He scanned the door with his X-ray vision. This time it's Jordan. Logically, Jordan, knowing the situation in his dorm, shouldn't be in such a hurry to return. Unless something special happens. After taking a shower, Los was full of energy. The comfort of last night hadn't made him slack off, on the contrary, he was brimming with energy. After a moment's thought, he opened the dormitory door a crack. Come out quickly. Jordan, in her female form, didn't enter the dormitory but urged in a low voice. What happened? Los walked out of the dormitory and looked at Jordan, whose face was serious. Jordan took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I just saw Anderson at school. And then? Los leaned against the dormitory door, remaining expressionless. Only a week has passed, and Anderson, who was seriously injured, should still be recovering in the hospital. Anderson, in a wheelchair, was led by Golden Boy into Professor Brinkhoff's office. Jordan frowned and said worriedly, I have a feeling he's after you. Professor Brinkhoff. Los muttered softly. This professor is the head of the Lamplighter School of Crime Prevention, and his influence at Godotkin University is even greater than that of the university's president, Indira Shetty. Anderson disregarded his injuries and went to see Professor Brinkhoff. If it was to get revenge on him, what would he say to the professor? At that moment, the dormitory door opened. Kate had already woken up after hearing the noise. She put on the same shirt and skirt she had worn yesterday, and looked at Ross and Jordan standing outside the door. What happened? Let's go inside and talk about it. Los made the proposal. The three returned to their dormitory and closed the door. Kate sat directly on Los's bed, while Jordan sat on his own bed, and they had a brief discussion. Or, should I contact Anderson and use my abilities to confirm his thoughts? Kate said with a worried look on her face. Now that she's with Los, she naturally considers him when making decisions. Los sat in his computer chair, tapped his fingers on the desk, and shook his head, saying, there's no need for that. Whatever Anderson's motives were, he went to the professor because he wanted the school's support. What Anderson wants to do now is no longer important. What matters is the school's attitude and thoughts towards me. Los began to consider the worst-case scenario. Anderson alone cannot cause any significant trouble. But if it's the school, then it's hard to say. Godotkin University is not only a special university equipped with doctors, security guards, and scientists, but it is also backed by the Vought Group. As Los thought of this, he had already come up with a solution in his mind. Noon. Just as Ross, Kate, who had just finished showering, and Jordan were having lunch in the school cafeteria. An unexpected person came to the table. A golden boy. Jordan looked at the handsome white young man who had approached him with surprise. The person who came was none other than the school's #1 ranked student, the golden boy. It was he who pushed Anderson's wheelchair to find Professor Brinkhoff that morning. Good afternoon, Jordan and Kate. Golden Boy's gaze lingered on Kate for a moment. Golden Boy, I'm with Los now. Kate gently embraced Ross's arm and said earnestly, I hope we can still be friends, just like before. I see. Golden Boy nodded and looked at the figure next to Kate. Los, I actually came here specifically to find you. Oh. Los looked up in surprise, staring at the Golden Boy. Jin Tong sighed, his expression struggling for a moment before he said with a melancholy look, I can't stop Anderson. He explained your ability to Professor Brinkhoff, which seems to involve the instability and danger of converting matter. Adding your own broken legs, I demand that the school severely punish you. Hey, we're classmates, why did things have to come to this? You'd better watch yourself. In closing, Jin Tong seemed to offer a well-intentioned piece of advice before turning and leaving. Jordan watched the Golden Boy leave and said in surprise, I didn't expect the Golden Boy to be so kind. It's well-intentioned, but not much. Los shook his head gently. He doesn't have the ability to read minds, but by observing the other person's heart through X-ray vision, he can discover some clues. At that moment, as Golden Boy walked out of the restaurant and looked at the sun outside, he sighed inwardly, "Anderson, I'm sorry." He clenched his fists, his eyes filled with determination, and whispered, "Little brother, I'll get you out of here soon." After lunch, Los and his two companions returned to their dormitory. In the dorm room, Ross turned on his computer and showed Kate and Jordan a surveillance video. Kate and Jordan were initially bewildered, but their expressions quickly changed. This is surveillance video from an underground experimental base. Inside more than 20 isolated laboratories, researchers in white coats are conducting human experiments on young boys and girls. What made them even more uneasy was that among the young test subjects in the laboratory, they saw several familiar faces who had already announced their withdrawal from school. They were students at Godotkin University. At the end of the video, the person who walked into the laboratory wearing a white coat was none other than Professor Brinkhofer, who was usually dressed in a suit and tie. "This laboratory is located underground in our school, directly beneath the apartment building." Los pointed to the ground and said calmly, "This is the true face of Godotkin University." Kate and Jordan were stunned and it took them a long time to come to their senses. "How dare they?" Kate gritted her teeth, trembling with rage. Jordan maintained his poker face and calmly looked at Los. "Should we expose the school's experimental facility to the public?" "It's useless." Los shook his head and said, "Godotkin University is backed by the Water Group, and the media's power is on the side of capital. Should we notify the Seven?" Kate stopped mid-sentence. She suddenly realized that the so-called savior hero team, the Super 7, was the most satisfying masterpiece of the Vought Corporation in this century, without exception. 022 The eve of gaining Superman and number 039, S power. "Look, this boy." Los pulled back the surveillance video on the computer and pointed to one of the laboratory rooms. Inside the laboratory, a white boy is being held captive. He is also the most heavily guarded member of the many laboratories. Kate and Jordan examined them carefully. Kate was stunned. "He looks a bit like Golden Boy." "That's true." Jordan's eyes widened, and he looked at Los in surprise. "Could it be that he is?" Los continued, "That's right, his name is Sam, and he's Golden Boy's younger brother." He paused, then speculated, Golden Boy should have known about the existence of the Forest Laboratory long ago, and also knew that his younger brother Sam was imprisoned in the underground laboratory. Kate realized something. Could it be that he wants to save Sam? "I see." Jordan suddenly realized and said in a deep voice, "Los, the Golden Boy reminded you in the restaurant not for your sake, but to rescue Sam. He wants you to take advantage of the chaos while you're fighting with the school authorities to rescue your brother from the lab." "I thought of that too," Los nodded. Jin Tong was probably worried that he would be taken into custody by the school, so he came over to remind him to be prepared. Jordan spat and sighed, "I thought he was just trying to be helpful, but I didn't expect him to have ulterior motives too." Kate didn't say anything more. She had simply made a decision in her heart, she would no longer be friends with Jin Tong. Now, plotting against Los is plotting against her. "So what should we do now, Los?" Inside the dormitory, both Kate and Jordan looked at Los, having already tacitly agreed that he was their leader. "Instead of waiting to be killed, we should take the initiative." Los opened the drawer, and a beam of light as bright as day shone from it, the arc reactor. "Today, everyone has selfish motives. Anderson, seeking revenge, Golden Boy, for his brother, and the school, perhaps with ulterior motives, all want to use Los as a pawn." He decided to stop pretending and just overturned the chessboard. Just as Los was thinking this, his cell phone in his pocket suddenly rang. He took it out, swiped the screen to check, and said with a playful tone, "It's a message from the principal, Ms. Indira Shetty. She wants me to go to the principal's office alone tonight." Kate quickly said, "Los, I'll go with you tonight." "No, we absolutely cannot go." Jordan shook his head solemnly and looked at Los, saying, "Why don't you leave the school now? We can't fight them on their turf." Los rejected both of their proposals. Taking Kate, who has mind control abilities, to the principal's office, the intention is all too obvious. As for escaping, where can one escape to? It's still hard to say whose territory it is. Los closed his eyes and whispered. "Soon." He reopened his eyes, his gaze sharp as a sword, and said to Kate and Jordan, "From now on, follow my instructions." That evening, night fell as expected at Godotkin University, and students, after finishing their dinners as usual, began to return to their dormitories. Soon it will be time for the school curfew. Los left the dormitory and walked alone towards the principal's office in the teaching building. On the school playground, a young black man in a wheelchair watched with schadenfreude as Los walked into the school building. At the same time, on the rooftop of the apartment building, a young white man, his eyes filled with complex emotions, watched Los from afar and sighed. In Anderson and Golden Boy's view, this rapidly rising campus legend will fall like a shooting star tonight. Thump. As soon as Los knocked, a loud and firm response came from the principal's office, "Come in." Pushing open the door, Los saw a middle-aged woman in a suit sitting in an office chair in the large, modern office. The current president of Godotkin University, Ms. Shetty, also looked at the students who walked into her office. He was of Chinese descent, very young, sunny and handsome, especially with his bright and expressive eyes. A freshman who defeated 2 opponents in a single open competition and is currently ranked 3rd in the entire school is a legend worthy of being recorded in the school's history. Ms. Shetty smiled and said, "Los, please have a seat." She teased, in a joking tone, "You're really popular at school now, a lot of female students must be chasing after you." Without any ceremony, Los sat down in the chair in front of the desk and went straight to the point, asking, "Madam Principal, is there something you need so late?" Ms. Shetty frowned slightly, realizing that the psychological tactics she used to use on ordinary students to get closer to them didn't seem to be working. "Since that's the case, then I'm looking for you because I want to understand your abilities." Ms. Shetty stared intently into Los's eyes, as if trying to see right through him. Los, puzzled, casually said, "My abilities? What's there to know? Aren't they all written in the student files, about enhancing and degrading substances? But as far as I know, you can turn metals like coins into non-metals." Ms. Shetty paused, then continued, "And last time at the Open, you turned the floor into gunpowder." Los shrugged. "Actually, I don't know how I did it either." Ms. Shetty tapped her finger on the table and said sternly, "Los, you are wary of the school." Los shook his head. "It's not that I'm wary of the school, it's you, all of you, who made me wary of the school." The talks have somewhat broken down. Ms. Shetty felt somewhat helpless. Today, Professor Brinkhoff came to her and asked her to entrust one of her students to his research. That's Los, whose ability is suspected to be the conversion of matter, which would be of great help to experimental research and the Vought Corporation. Originally, Ms. Shetty wanted to try her luck. If Los seriously discloses his abilities and is willing to follow her orders in the future, it is not impossible to save Los. Unfortunately, Los was not cooperative. Ms. Shetty's approachable smile vanished, and she spoke in a low voice, "You went a bit too far by blowing Anderson's legs off during the Open. I remember that, according to the rules of the school's Open tournament, injuries are quite common." Los chuckled lightly, "If I had been the one who lost both legs or arms in that duel, would the school have held Anderson accountable?" Ms. Shetty remained silent. "Anderson is different. His father was the hero to extremes and also a member of the board of trustees of Godotkin University." Ms. Shetty looked at Los with regret. Professor Brinkhoff's demands, the pressure from the two-way board of directors, and Los's lack of cooperation. She had already made up her mind. An excellent student is not as good as an excellent experimental subject, at least they are easier to control. Ms. Shetty picked up the principal's personal phone, dialed a short number, and said coldly, "Send a team over." She had just put down the microphone when Los, sitting opposite her, suddenly said, "Principal, sending one team of security guards from the woods isn't enough. Let's call all the security guards over." "You?" Ms. Shetty looked at Los in astonishment. Her mind was a little confused for a moment. How did this student find out about the Forest Human Experimentation Institute? "It's almost time." Los calmly stood up from his seat and glanced at the rich night scene of the campus outside the window. Ms. Shetty doesn't have superpowers, but she understands people very well. She sensed something was very wrong and kicked a red emergency button under the table, trying to contact the headquarters of the water group. Los calmly replied, "It's no use. I just cut off the school's external signals." He was equipped with devices that blocked external signals, so from that moment on, no phone calls or internet messages could be sent out of the campus. At this moment, Los stopped pretending and laid his cards on the table. Now, he has taken over Godotkin University. Tonight is the eve of gaining superhuman strength. 023 Fierce Battle, Armed Suppression. Late at night. At Godotkin University, students have gradually gone to sleep in their dormitories after the lights have been turned off. One by one, fully armed security personnel, carrying automatic firearms and sonic equipment and wearing protective helmets, quietly broke the tranquility of the playground at night. They emerged from an underground portal, formed well-trained tactical ranks, and approached the brightly lit school building. At this time, inside the principal's office in the central teaching building, Indira Shetty stared in astonishment at the young man who had calmly risen from his seat, facing the night view of the campus outside the window. His demeanor now changed. Compared to her previous sunny and easygoing demeanor, she is now unrestrained, wise, and ruthless, exuding a confident sense of control over the present moment. Not right. Ignoring etiquette, she crouched down under the table and pressed the emergency contact button for the water group headquarters again, but there was no response as expected. As Lo said, he had cut off the school's external communications. To truly control a school, besides possessing power that transcends the school grounds, there is another crucial point. The changes at the school must not be noticed by outsiders, or even by students. Los's operation will fail if the VOT group discovers it or the students find out. So he waited for night to fall and for the campus curfew to begin, and then, using this as a pretext, he went to the principal's office to block out external signals. A flurry of footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the door. Armed personnel had arrived. Upon hearing the commotion, Ms. Shetty's expression calmed down, and she regained her composure. Godotkin University doesn't have ordinary security guards, it has combat teams whose weapons and training are specifically designed for superhuman students. Even Sam, the younger brother of the school's top student, is nothing more than prey to the combat team. Just as Ms. Shetty was relaxing and thinking about this, she saw Ross unbutton his coat. A ray of white light shone through the shirt and seeped out from underneath. It is evident that it is a metallic energy crystal embedded in the center of the chest. That is the groundbreaking creation that Los has been building this week. Click. The wooden door to the principal's office was kicked open, and a group of armed men, seemingly shrouded in darkness, stormed in. There were 8 people in total, guarding the room. Soon, they were all stunned. I saw Principal Shetty across from me. Before the desk, a sleek, obsidian black armor plate, thin and advanced, fits perfectly against the young man's body, transforming him into an Iron Man. Centered on the bright energy bar on its chest, pieces of meticulously crafted armor are pieced together, with its limbs and eye sockets radiating a cold glow. The perfect metallic curves, with almost no gaps, resemble an alien artifact or a machine from the future. The headmistress, her slender back pressed against the wall, exclaimed in surprise. "Grab him!" Almost the instant the principal gave the order, gunshots with silencers rang out. 8 armed men fired almost simultaneously, their bullets forming a steel torrent that converged on Los's armored body. To deal with superhumans, we must use unconventional armed attacks. Although the principal's order was only to arrest them, they would do their best, since superhumans are generally not easy to die. Faced with the automatic rifle fire, Los had no choice but to dodge or take cover. Ding ding ding! Sparks flew everywhere, and every bullet that landed on the titanium alloy armor shattered, its dented bullet heads raining down on the floor. It was just that the kinetic energy generated by the numerous bullets made it difficult for Los to move forward. Suppressive firepower, hey? Now it's my turn. Without giving the armed men time to reload, Los raised his hands. 2 blinding white lights shone from the center of the palm covered in black armor. Laugh, laugh. 2 beams of white energy swept across the air above the principal's office. Almost instantly, 2 armed men 10 meters away were pierced by the rushing water, guns and all. The bulletproof vest is as thin as paper. The human body is melted through by the high temperature of the energy, and the wound is completely penetrating. Faced with this extremely shocking scene, the other armed personnel were momentarily stunned. Normally, they can easily suppress superhuman experimental subjects, relying on their superior weaponry and equipment. Now, automatic rifles are like primitive men wielding stone spears fighting a modern army compared to the enemy's energy hand cannons. Are you kidding me? Bang! The engine on the back of the titanium alloy armor started, and with an extremely strong push, Los swooped down a short distance at low altitude and rushed into the ranks of armed personnel. He gripped the gun with one metal hand, pressing the armed man, who appeared to be a captain, against the wall. Honor certificates scattered on the wall, and cracks began to appear on the wall as the pressure was applied. The armed captain growled in pain, his gun pressed against Los's armored metal chest, still gripping the trigger. Bullets flew everywhere. Even after emptying the magazine, it still couldn't penetrate the target's armor. The armed captain, trapped inside the wall, felt a wave of suffocation and despair. He struggled and cried out, "Sonic weapon!" Even without his reminder, after discovering that the firearms were useless, the other armed personnel turned on the sonic devices they were equipped with. Often, just one sonic device is enough to knock out a superhuman student with enhanced physical abilities, let alone 5 devices simultaneously. Almost instantly, the sound waves and actual shock waves intertwined in the principal's office blasted towards Los. Sound waves overlapped, and metal vibrated. On the ceiling, the magnificent glass chandelier shattered first under the impact of the sound waves, sinking into darkness. From the very moment the battle began, the headmistress, Ms. Shetty, was hiding under her desk. Even now, more than 10 meters away from the sound wave area, Ms. Shetty, who was holding her head in her hands, still felt extremely dizzy. The sound waves lasted for a full 10 seconds before stopping, and then all the sounds went quiet. The principal's office was in a mess, and deathly silent in the darkness. Clearly, the battle is over. Ms. Shetty breathed a sigh of relief and helped herself up from the table. Godotkin University suppressed the student rebellion, as always. Ms. Shetty wore a relieved smile, but the smile quickly froze as she got up from the ground. In the dark and deathly silent office, only one tall figure stood, his eyes, radiating a cold, energetic light, calmly watching her. Like a mechanical demon god. That's impossible, Ms. Shetty said, her voice trembling. She held a high position at the school for many years and was skilled at using psychology to control superhuman students. This time, she rarely showed fear and despair, her still attractive body trembled all over. Knowing you were carrying sonic weapons, you didn't think my armor wasn't adequately protected, did you? Los looked down at the armed men lying haphazardly on the ground and crushed a sonic device under his feet. Suppressing her fear, Ms. Shetty asked, Los, what exactly do you want? We can sit down and talk this over. Los shook his head. There's no need to talk anymore. I want this school, it's mine. Ms. Shetty advised, even if you kill me, you won't become the head of the school. Everything here belongs to the Water Corporation. Use their own methods against them. Los chuckled softly, glancing at the headmistress with a playful expression. Dear headmistress, don't you enjoy manipulating people's hearts and treating students like tools? Have you ever thought that you yourself will spend the rest of your life being a manipulated tool? 024 Breakthrough Godotkin University. What do you want to do to me? Ms. Shetty crossed her arms and stared in fear at the Iron Man standing in the darkness. At this time, a series of crisp high-heeled clapping sounds rang out from the outside corridor. Ms. Shetty looked up and, with the help of the light from the outside corridor, saw a familiar and beautiful figure walk into the office. Her long, flowing golden hair shone beautifully against the light. Ms. Shetty stared blankly at the blonde girl. Kate. That's right, it was Kate, one of her most promising and prized students, whose ability was mind control. Kate looked over the bodies of the armed men on the ground and came to the bullet-riddled Iron Man. Ms. Shetty smiled bitterly, understanding what Los had just said. Her face contorted with pain, she snapped, Kate, how could you do this? I'm the principal, and I've always treated you well. This is blatant betrayal. Mrs. Shetty, it's because you've been so good to me that I asked Los to do this. Kate shook her head, speaking seriously. Under the bright moonlight streaming in through the window, Kate, dressed in a white dress, was beautiful and charming, like a pure white flower. She gracefully walked up to Ms. Shetty and gently embraced her with her smooth arms. Believe me, I'm doing this for your own good. Kate's gentle whisper was just like the headmistress's usual psychological tactics and empty promises. Her long, narrow, and bright eyes shimmered with a bewitching light, and her skin glowed white in the moonlight, as if she had transformed from a white flower into a witch. Manipulate mental abilities to activate. Kate begins to alter Principal Indira Shetty's memories. Some of the militants didn't die, they were just stunned by the sound waves, which also erased their memories. After giving a brief instruction, Los opened the office window, started the engines in his hands and feet, and flew out of the teaching building. This is part of the plan to control the school. After subduing the principal and the armed men, Kate altered their memories, implanting a belief in their loyalty to Los. This kind of behavior cannot be considered just. However, Los himself had no intention of becoming a savior hero, and some of Injustice Superman's dictatorial ideas even suited his taste. Moreover, Los felt no guilt whatsoever about manipulating the minds of the Godotkin school staff who had committed numerous atrocities. Now that the principal and some armed personnel are under control, all that's left is the school's underground experimental base. Los pondered inwardly. The armor's built-in network was constantly monitoring surveillance throughout the campus to prevent any unforeseen events. Due to the sudden turn of events today, the completed armored vehicle had no chance to be tested. Los was not very skilled at maneuvering the steel armor as he flew towards the experimental base. The steel engine propelled the vehicle, its white exhaust streaking across the night sky above the campus as it approached the playground. Unexpected changes occurred. Armored Los plummeted from a height of 50 meters into the football field below, the powerful impact making him resemble a meteorite, ruthlessly tearing apart a large area of grass. Covered in mud. Los shook his dizzy head and got up from the grassy ditch. It wasn't a driving error, but rather a sudden, powerful pulling force generated on the playground that caused him to fall from the night sky. Los looked up and saw a metal wheelchair approaching in the dim light. In the darkness, the young man's skin tone in the wheelchair had a natural concealing effect, and his eyes, filled with resentment, were fixed on Los. Los, you're inside the metal armor, right? Anderson spoke in a low voice, raising his hands in the air. Before Los, covered in titanium alloy armor, could even stand up, he was surrounded by magnetic forces from all directions and floated into the air. With his metal arms pressed tightly against his thighs, Los was as if bound by an invisible hand, suspended in midair about 3 meters above the ground, unable to retaliate. The metal wheelchair continued to approach. Anderson manipulated the magnetic force remotely, controlling the armor on Los's body. He strained, his voice hoarse, and said, "Do you know what I've been doing in the hospital these past few days? Both legs amputated, I'm now disabled." Looking at the young black man who was now only half a body, Los calmly said. Isn't this all your own choice? When you want to destroy others, you should be prepared to be destroyed by them. He smiled and continued, it's just that I was the one who won that day. Shut up. Anderson abruptly pulled his hands back, greatly increasing the magnetic force, causing the titanium alloy armor on Los's body to emit a sharp, squeaking sound. So what if you won last time? I won tonight. His dark face contorted in a sneer. You like setting up gunpowder, don't you? Did you set it up on the playground too? Anderson decided to twist the entire armor and crush Los inside. No landmines were laid, but... Los paused, then suddenly asked, do you know what I'm waiting for? Waiting for what? Anderson's heart skipped a beat, and he asked instinctively. He was confident that he was in control of the situation, and that Los, covered in metal, had no chance to resist. But why do I feel a sense of palpitation? I'm waiting for the bullets to fly. Los had barely finished speaking. Anderson then saw a faint glint of light from a lens shimmering behind Los, in the direction of the school apartments. In the blink of an eye, a bullet whizzed past Los's feet and arrived right in front of him. Anderson stared wide-eyed. In a life-or-death situation, he instinctively focused his magnetic field manipulation abilities on the bullet in front of him. Pity. The bullet didn't budge an inch, not even a slight deviation or pause, and hit him right between the eyebrows. Laugh. Blood stained the metal wheelchair. Los, freed from the magnetic restraints and landing from mid-air, calmly looked at Anderson, who had been shot in the head. Unfortunately, this bullet is not made of metal. He said softly. Los did not convert the entire school grounds into gunpowder, but he did install remotely controlled guns in many places throughout the school. Some of the bullets were made of non-metallic materials, which were prepared for Anderson from the very beginning. If Anderson hadn't gone all out tonight, Ross might have spared his life, allowing Kate to alter his memories and use him as a tool to stay at the school. The moment Anderson made his move, his death was imminent. Perhaps Anderson was just young and impetuous at first, wanting to outdo Los at school. But sometimes fate is like that, one wrong step leads to another. Going against me is your biggest mistake. Los turned around, started the steel engine again, and flew up from the grass toward the experimental base. He has now blocked the entire school's network signal, hacked the surveillance system, and even set up remotely controlled firearms. That's why he said it. It's not certain whose territory it is. With the power of knowledge, Godotkin University is about to be overtaken by speedrunners. Wotech Group Headquarters. Late at night, the Intelligence Department. Strangeness. The intelligence officer on duty looked at the no-signal message displayed on his screen. She immediately reported, Godotkin University has lost contact. Should we send someone over to investigate? 025 The strongest school to battle. In the stillness of the night, the cool moonlight bathed Godotkin University. The sleeping students were unaware of the changes taking place on campus. Covered in titanium alloy first-generation armor, resembling an Iron Man, Los, his engine flashing and then fading, arrived at the entrance of the underground experimental base. The door lock had long been melted through by the flames. Los easily pushed open the iron gate. There were no armed personnel blocking the way, and the staircase leading deep underground was quiet, with only dim lights on. Los had already hacked into the school's surveillance network and knew that Golden Boy was in the principal's office, so he took advantage of the chaos to break into the underground laboratory. The melted marks on the door lock were made by Golden Boy, who possesses the ability to explode flames. However, after Jin Tong broke into the underground experimental base, the laboratory's surveillance system was severely damaged, and the current situation inside is unknown. Los raised his X-ray vision and scanned downwards with his X-ray-like gaze to confirm the situation first. He saw groups of armed men lying in pools of blood on the stairs, some of whom were burned to the point that only the metal frames of their weapons remained. As the undisputed number one in the entire school, it's not surprising that Jin Tong has this ability. Just. Los's downward gaze quickly stopped, and his metallic face became serious. His feet, clad in titanium alloy armor, stepped down the stairs, past the corpses, and onto the underground corridor leading to the laboratory. Los stopped at the corner and looked at a figure sitting in a pool of blood, leaning against the wall. His hair was stained with blood, his young and handsome face was pale and bloodless, and he was dressed in a gentleman's suit. He was none other than the top student of Godotkin University. Golden Boy. At this moment, Jin Tong was sitting on the ground with a fist-shaped hole in his chest, and blood was still gushing out uncontrollably. Hearing the noise, Jin Tong barely managed to lift his eyes and saw the metal figure in front of him covered in battle damage. He was taken aback at first, but quickly realized what was happening and spoke weakly and laboredly, "Yes, Los." Los glanced at it and said calmly, "Your internal organs have been removed, and you've lost a lot of blood. You're about to die." In reality, an ordinary person would have died long ago, Only a superhuman like Golden Boy is clinging to life. I know. Golden Boy gave a bitter smile. It was Sam, but he was injected with experimental drugs and became delirious. It wasn't intentional. There was no blame in his tone, instead, there was relief. I never imagined that the last thing I would see was you. Jin Tong looked at Los with difficulty and said with self-reproach, Los, I'm sorry, I actually schemed against you. But my brother is innocent. Please, save my brother. After weakly uttering these words, blood trickled from the corner of Jin Tong's mouth, and the light in his eyes gradually faded, like a puddle of mud helplessly sliding down the wall. He died. I'll give it a try. Los neither agreed nor refused, and continued walking towards the laboratory along the uneven corridor. Boom, boom. The closer Los got to the laboratory, the stronger the tremors he felt from the floor, as if a giant wielding a warhammer was slamming into the ground. Along the way, the bodies of the armed men were smashed to pieces like watermelons. These are all the masterpieces of Sam's rampage. As the younger brother of the Golden Boy, he possesses an astonishing physique far exceeding that of ordinary people, capable of easily lifting a car or leaping over a house. Isn't that just a mini-Hulk? What caused Sam to go berserk was not anger, but a split personality. Los entered the badly damaged experimental site and saw that some researchers, in order to protect themselves, had locked themselves in the laboratory. A curly-haired young man in a hospital gown was frantically pounding on an iron door with his blood-soaked fists, causing the specially made iron door to dent under the blows. Los's approach caught Sam's attention, and a pair of bloodshot, hollow eyes stared at him. Come on, Sam. Los took a deep breath and hooked his metal-covered index finger. The next instant, Sam stomped on the floor and accelerated suddenly, creating a powerful gust of wind as he crashed into Los like a small truck. A light as bright as day shone forth, and a pair of engines roared from the metal hand. Armored Los suddenly sidestepped and moved horizontally at high speed. As he dodged Sam's physical impact, a pair of metal hands pressed down on Sam's left hand and back shoulder, attempting to pin him to the ground and subdue him. As a result, Sam suddenly pushed forward with his bare feet, and with the burst of his powerful physique, he slammed Los behind him into the corridor wall. Bang! The wall immediately caved in and cracked. Even wearing titanium alloy armor, Los still had the illusion that he had been hit by a truck. As expected, it's not that simple. Trapped inside the wall, Los, through his metal helmet, peered at Sam, who was charging up a powerful punch. This armor set is not the heavy armor type of the Hulkbuster and is not good at close combat. Moreover, the experimental subject in front of them, Sam, is the true strongest at Godotkin University, with combat power surpassing that of Golden Boy. Boom! Los crossed his arms to protect his chest, blocking Sam's punch. With a metallic clang, the armor was driven further into the wall. The armor on his hands was dented with fist marks and cracked. This can't go on. Los quickly raised his hand cannon, and a blinding white light of energy shone from the engine port in his palm. Despite being in a state of mental breakdown, Sam sensed danger and immediately picked up a piece of sheet metal to use as a shield. The energy beam quickly melted through the metal sheet and grazed past Sam's curly hair as he looked down. At the same time, Los's armored right foot slammed forward, and propelled by the engine, it struck the opponent's chin squarely, sending Sam, who was pressing forward, flying. Instead of pressing his advantage, he broke free from the wall, started the engines in his hands and feet at the same time, and flew away towards the back of the experimental base's corridor. Sam's body slammed against the wall, his clothes ripped to shreds, but he got up unharmed and chased after the Iron Man who seemed to be trying to escape. The two walked one after the other, and the scenery on both sides of the laboratory corridor rushed past them. The corridor wasn't very wide, and although Los was flying using his energy engine, Sam, who was sprinting barefoot, kept closing the distance. They hadn't caught up completely yet, the corridor ahead was pitch black, clearly a dead end in the base. Los slowed down and came to a stop, landing on the floor. Sam continued charging towards him regardless of the danger. Suddenly, Los raised his hand cannon. The power he had just witnessed was still fresh in Sam's memory, and he instinctively made a dodge move. Then, his body, which was rushing forward, slammed into the wall deep in the corridor. Kid, game over. Los smiled and walked to a turnstile in the corridor. Sam looked around blankly and suddenly realized he was lying on a pile of cables. With X-ray vision, having hacked into surveillance cameras, and knowing every corner of this experimental base, how could Los, in a panic, possibly flee into a dead end? Los pulled the switch after successfully luring the enemy. ZZ. Lightning flashed. A powerful arc of electricity instantly pierced through Sam's body, which was now only wearing a pair of pants. 5 seconds later, Los turned off the power. Sam, whose curly hair had turned into an afro, collapsed to the ground unconscious, his muscles still twitching, and residual arcs of electricity lingering on his body. 026 A long night. The arc reactor's energy is down to 28%, thank goodness. Looking at Sam, who was stunned by the electric shock, Los checked the armor and breathed a sigh of relief. In a real fight, it wouldn't be so easy to defeat Sam, who has a strong physique. However, Sam, who suffers from schizophrenia, has little fighting skill and even less intelligence. Besides, this school is his territory. Come out, everyone. The armor was badly damaged again. Los carried Sam back into the laboratory and looked at the researchers hiding in a specially made laboratory. 4 researchers survived tonight's unrest. The 4 researchers looked at Los, who was wearing armor, and cautiously asked, "Are you sent by the VOT group?" Los laid the unconscious Sam on the ground and said bluntly, "Who I am is not important. What is important is that from now on you will all be working for me." The researchers were collectively stunned. However, it was clear that they alone were no longer able to stop Los from taking control of the underground experimental base. Los hacked into the security system, immediately unlocked the laboratory doors, and knocked the researchers unconscious one by one. He looked at the people lying on the ground, and the gruesome corpses scattered all over the place. Next. All we have to do is wait for Kate to arrive and alter the memories of Sam, the student experimenters, and the researchers. Correct. Los suddenly realized this. Kate's mind control and restraint over superhumans are far less effective than those over ordinary people. Just in case, Los used a specially made chain to lock Sam up. This is the end. The principal and the underground experimental base were both under his control. Tonight, almost everything happened as Los predicted, including the armed squad's encirclement, Anderson's attack, and Sam's out-of-control rampage. Is this the end of the night? But at this moment, Los's titanium alloy armor's built-in communication system received an emergency contact signal from his roommate Jordan. This is an unexpected signal. Los suddenly looked up and gazed at a corner of the ceiling of the experimental base, in the direction of the school gate. Problem occurs. Godotkin University, at the school gate. Inside the guard booth, Jordan looked at the 2 night watchmen he had knocked unconscious. According to Los's plan, Jordan's task was much simpler than Los and Kate's actions on campus. All she had to do was control the security guards at the gate, prevent any students from leaving the campus, and prevent any outsiders from entering, until Kate had completed her mind control. It seems very difficult. However, the school itself has a curfew, and students generally do not go out on their own. In addition, Godotkin University is under military alert at night, so it's virtually impossible for outsiders to enter the campus. That's how it should be. Jordan stood in the guard booth, looking at the quiet campus, and felt that Ross and Kate's situation was almost over. My tense nerves relaxed a little. She was yawning when, out of the blue, she heard the sound of clapping. There's someone behind it all. Jordan froze. It was like being doused with a bucket of ice water, completely waking me up. She quickly turned around and saw a tall, imposing figure in black standing near the security booth. When exactly did the other party get close? Jordan looked like she'd seen a ghost. Even if she had relaxed a bit, she shouldn't have been able to let someone get so close without her noticing. The mysterious man peered through the glass window at the ordinary security guard who had been knocked unconscious inside the guard booth, his gaze finally settling on Jordan. He didn't speak, like a black ghost. Almost instantly, Jordan quietly pressed the emergency contact button that he had been holding in his palm. Because she already recognized who the other person was. Bathed in the cool, silvery moonlight. It is evident that the mysterious man is nearly 1.9 meters tall, and his burly body is completely covered by sturdy dark armor, without revealing even the slightest gap. He wore black sheaths on his hands and feet, and his dark glasses, like the deep darkness of night, calmly watched Jordan. It can't be wrong. The mysterious figure before me looks exactly like the person in a statue at Godotkin University. One of the members of the Super 7, the most mysterious member, a hero whose true face has never been revealed. Black. Just as Jordan pressed the emergency contact button, the glass window in front of him shattered. Black leaped into the security booth, quickly pinned Jordan, who was in female form, to the ground, and started to break her fingers. He keenly noticed Jordan's subtle movements. Get out of my way. Jordan simply spread his 5 fingers and blasted the energy impact towards the black figure pressing down on him. The energy impact that could shake a vehicle only caused Xian Se to take 2 steps back before continuing to press forward and close in on him. Jordan's t-shirt was slightly stretched by her muscles. She switched to male form, her physical abilities were enhanced, and she threw a swift and powerful punch at Black. With a slight tilt of his head, Xian easily dodged Jordan's punch. Jordan wanted to continue his attack, but then felt a sharp pain in his fist. She turned her head in surprise and saw a black, sharp blade, resembling a military knife, embedded in her arm. When exactly? So fast. Jordan crossed her arms and tried to pull back to create some distance, but with a whooshing sound, a sharp blade struck her knee. No way, the level difference is too great. She needs to continue buying time. Jordan slammed open the back door of the security booth and stumbled to the floor inside the campus, blood streaming down his arms and knees. He still didn't say anything. Xian Se slowly walked out of the security booth, his dark blade dancing nimbly in his hand like a butterfly, radiating a sharp killing intent. He drew his knife and continued to approach Jordan. At this time, a blinding white light, like a bolt of lightning striking down. Suins reacted extremely quickly, almost instinctively jumping backward to avoid the energy beam. At the same time, clang! With the clanging of metal, a battle-damaged obsidian metal figure descended from the sky and landed in front of Jordan. Are you all right? As Los landed, he turned to look at Jordan behind him. It's all right, I just can't fight for the time being. Jordan, in his male form, gritted his teeth and pulled the sharp blades out of his arms and knees. That's good. Los nodded, casting a solemn gaze at the black figure ahead. He hadn't expected that the water group would send this person to inspect the campus. After all, from the perspective of the water group, Godotkin University had only lost its network connection, and the signal was quickly restored. In the usual way, such minor incidents would at most involve sending network maintenance personnel to investigate. However, this time they not only sent combat personnel, but also a member of one of the Super 7. This is no less than using a cannon to kill a mosquito. What Los didn't know was that this was indeed an accident. Suins glanced at the crater in the ground and looked at Los, who was covered in advanced armor. An unexpected delight. The intelligence personnel from the VOT group originally intended to send someone to repair the network, but Xian Se happened to be handling a mission near the school, so he was sent to investigate along the way. Who made Suins the most loyal hero and lackey of the Wotek group? 027 A true battle to the death. It was well past midnight, and the bustling city of New York was eerily quiet. At the entrance of Godotkin University, two figures are facing off. Under the cool moonlight of the night sky, Los, covered in obsidian-colored first-generation armor, was coated with a faint layer of silvery white metallic light. He was like a mechanical being from outer space, his chest and eye sockets glowing with white energy as he stared at Suins, a black phantom dressed in dark battle armor, emerging from a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Be careful, he's very strong. Jordan struggled to his feet and staggered back onto the lawn, making room for Los. In a battle of this magnitude, his presence would be a burden, especially since he is now injured and unable to fight. I know, Los nodded. Each member of the Super 7 possesses extraordinary strength, and Xian Se is definitely not the weakest among them. Actually, if it were another member who came here tonight to investigate, such as Queen Maeve or Starlight, Los might try to communicate with male beauty with the art of language, but it's precisely the black color that's absolutely impossible to communicate with. Suins is the most loyal member of the Super 7 to the VOT group, an assassin who obeys orders without question, and the sharpest blade. When the other party arrived at the campus and realized the changes at the school, Los had no other choice. Tonight, we'll either keep the black-clad hero or lose everything. At this moment, Suins was also sizing up Los, who was wearing armor. The armor is made of advanced technology never seen before. The hand-mounted engine can fire powerful energy cannons, and the numerous battle damages on the outer shell indicate that it has been through a large-scale battle. This mysterious student is dangerous. Suins immediately tried to report the special situation here to the headquarters of the water group using a special code, but found that the communication signal was cut off as they approached the school. Clearly, blocking the signal across the entire school was also the other party's doing. Should we retreat first? Due to brain damage, Suins didn't have many emotions. After a brief moment of thought, he chose to stay with his blade in hand. No problem, it can be resolved. He had once single-handedly destroyed a tank with 30-centimeter thick protective steel plates on the battlefield, let alone the armored vehicle before him. There was no communication. As the moon was once again obscured by dark clouds, and the campus fell into darkness. Los and Black moved at the same time. Laugh. Two beams of piercing white energy tore through the night and shot toward the dark figure. Just as Los aimed with his steel hand, Suins used a zigzag movement to reach subsonic speed, nimbly dodging the two energy beams like a black phantom. With a blur of motion, he rapidly approached Los, wielding a black blade. In the blink of an eye, the sharp blade in Xian Se's hand pierced through the air and reached the front of Los's armor. The engine flames subsided, and Los did not choose to fly into the sky to create distance. Not only was it because the injured Jordan was not far behind him, but mainly because the arc reactor had little energy left. The arc reactor, made of palladium, provides far more power than conventional energy sources, but it lacks the superior endurance of the new element energy found in the cosmic cube. Los has fought 3 battles in a row tonight, and the arc reactor is almost burned out, so it must be used sparingly. So, Los clenched his right hand, the miniature engine on his arm propelled him, and his armored hand blade met the black, stabbing blade. On the lawn nearby, using a large tree as cover, Jordan could only see in the darkness ahead, where sparks flew wildly as the clanging of metal continued to ring out. She held her breath nervously, feeling utterly shocked. In such a dark environment, he could hardly see anything even a few meters away, yet the two were locked in a close-quarters battle. In a short period of time, Los and Xian Se fought countless times in hand-to-hand combat, one wielding an armored hand blade and the other a black razor. In fact, according to Los's X-ray vision, there is no difference between day and night. With his X-ray vision, he could see into his opponent's muscles and heart, and with the help of the engine, his steel hand blades relentlessly cleaved through the air. Each time, the hand clashed violently with the blade, neither side gaining the upper hand. At this moment, Suance, who was engaged in battle, was somewhat shaken. Even without any emotion, he still found it difficult to handle. He was a veteran of countless battles, and all his skills and martial arts honed to the highest level had long become instinctive. In his view, the Iron Man he was fighting seemed to have never learned any martial arts, but every move he made was based on anticipation and counterattack, and was clean and efficient. It's like fighting a robot that can't make mistakes. Snapped. Los suddenly opened his steel left hand and firmly gripped the black blade that was stabbing towards his metal eye socket. At the same time, his right hand, with its 5 fingers together, swung down towards the black blade's neck. The sharp blade, imbued with several tons of black power, cleaved through the already damaged armor on the left hand. He glanced sideways, not caring about Los's hand chop, since his specially made combat suit was more than capable of withstanding the blunt steel hand chop. But the next moment, Los suddenly opened his 5 fingers as he swung his hand towards the black-clad figure, and a dazzling light of energy shone from the engine in his palm. A close-range energy hand cannon is not easy to dodge. With his rich combat experience, Suance made the most correct on-the-spot reaction in an instant, using an elbow strike to send Los flying. A light as bright as day flashed, and the energy beam deflected, grazing the black-clad man's shoulder before missing its mark. Holding a cold, sharp blade, Xian Se was about to chase after Los, who was flying backward, when he felt the ground beneath his feet suddenly tremble. Is this a landmine? Before Suance could think any further, the floor beneath his feet suddenly exploded, a deafening blast swept through, and flames shot up several meters high. With the armored engine activated, Los stabilized himself in midair, gazing at the core area engulfed by the fiery explosions ahead. When fighting against a highly experienced super assassin like Suance, you either have to overwhelm him with sheer numerical superiority or resort to techniques whose information you don't know about. Now, Los's stats aren't high enough, so we have to choose the second option. The opponent remained wary of his energy hand cannon, but his killing move was hidden in the gunpowder formed through matter conversion. Did we win? Hidden behind a large tree, the injured Jordan gazed at the battlefield engulfed in flames. Everyone in the school knows about Los's trick, but people outside the school don't, and they can easily suffer a big loss if they are caught off guard. Jordan's pupils suddenly contracted, and a figure, more like a black phantom, emerged from the sea of fire. Los's X-ray vision made it clear. At the moment of the explosion, Suance jumped up quickly and curled his body up. Without being directly hit by the gunpowder at close range, the combat suit also withstood the blast wave and flames. As expected, it's not that simple. Los narrowed his eyes. Suance, whether in terms of extraordinary abilities or combat experience and skills, is completely incomparable to Godotkin's superhuman students. Tonight is destined to be a fight to the death, and he has no absolute certainty of victory. 028 The End, Superman Dozn and number 039, T-Die at Dawn. Then let's continue. Los landed on the ground, glanced at the shattered armor on his left hand, and reached out to pick up the black blade that Jordan had just thrown on the ground. This specially made military knife is made of a good alloy material, it can even penetrate titanium alloy armor. Los held the knife and gently rubbed the side of the black blade with his fingers, it was as smooth as a mirror. There was still no communication. Tread. The black figure burst out of the sea of fire at subsonic speed, stirring up a strong wind and leaving after images, resembling an immortal black phantom. Hum. The engines of Los's steel armor started up, accompanied by scorching flames and a roar, propelling him forward to engage in battle with the black-clad warriors. At this moment, the armor on Los's left hand was destroyed, and he gripped the black blade with his flesh and blood, which was almost indistinguishable from that of an ordinary person. If we continue with close-quarters combat like before, we'll suffer a great loss. Fortunately, this area of Godotkin University is Los Angeles territory. The sniper's position has been transmitted by Los through the armor's internal network, and the target has been locked in. Call out. While Los was fighting with Suance, a bullet was fired from the direction of the school dormitory behind them and arrived in front of Suance first. Are there snipers? The dark-skinned man instinctively dodged, the bullet grazing past his goggles and scratching the dark glass. At the same time, 2 more bullets came from different directions, one from the cafeteria and the other from the roof of the teaching building. Bang, bang. He was unexpectedly shot twice in the arm and back, but his specially made black combat suit protected him. The bullet did not cause any actual armor-piercing damage to him, but the long-range impact of the bullet still caused the attacker to pause in his movements. How could Los miss this opportunity? In the blink of an eye. Propelled by the engine, it approached Suin's body, and the right engine cannon of the armored Los directly pressed against Suin's chest, while the fleshy left hand forcefully swung down the black blade. Both the sharp blades and the beam cannons are aimed at fatal spots. Suins didn't think much about it. Almost instinctively, he thrust the blade in his hand downwards, inserting it between the muzzle of the armored Los engine and his own chest, using it as a blade-shaped shield to protect himself. Suins judged that blocking the energy beam attack was the best option at the moment. As for the black blade held in the opponent's left hand, that was his knife. Suins knew very well that his specially made armor could barely withstand the slashing of the sharp blade. Moreover, the speed at which the opponent swung the knife was too slow, and it seemed like he didn't have much power at all. The energy beam struck the black blade held by the black-clad man, causing the blade to quickly turn red and almost melt. It was blocked. Suins was about to draw his knife to retaliate when he felt a sharp pain in the right side of his neck, and a spurt of bright red blood gushed out. He froze, staring blankly at the black blade that was halfway inserted into his neck. How could that be? His custom-made armor was easily sliced open by the blade, like a blank sheet of paper. Los, having delivered the fatal blow, raised the corners of his mouth. Just now, while picking up the black sword, he changed the alloy material structure of the blade. Make it harder and sharper. Perhaps because the alloy material of this blade is top-notch, Los recalled the structure of vibranium metal while using his matter conversion ability. Therefore, he reinforced the blade with materials that resembled vibranium. Although Los is not yet able to fully convert vibranium, as long as he gets as close to the structure of vibranium as possible, it will be enough to make the blade have a sharpness similar to adamantium, like Wolverine's claws. Even the slightest effect is enough to pierce through high-grade armor. The black blade pierced the carotid artery. Suins froze for less than half a second, then went berserk and rammed his head into Los at high speed. Bang! The powerful impact shattered both the dark goggles and the armored face shield. Los flew backward several meters and crashed heavily to the ground, revealing his true face, a young and handsome man. He opened his eyes wide and saw a black man with a military knife stuck in the right side of his neck, blood flowing continuously, ignoring his fatal wound like a wild beast and continuing to move forward. The black goggles and helmet were shattered, revealing a severely burned, disfigured African face. A pair of old but sharp eyes stared intently at Los on the ground. Xian-Se had come to a profound understanding of what the rebellious superhuman students meant to the Vought group. If we let him continue to develop, he might become a major enemy of the Water group. For the sake of the Vought group, they must be killed. Just tonight. Even at the cost of my own life. The black figure suddenly accelerated, and covered in blood, he pressed down on the armored Los, his red-tinged blade scratching wildly like the claws of a lone wolf. The heavily damaged titanium alloy armor continued to crack and shatter. Bullets landed on Xian-Se, but had no effect whatsoever. Even if it had the effect of injuring someone, Suins had already ignored everything, like a real ghost trying to drag Los down to hell. A life for a life. Dark blood, sharp blades and fists fell on the tattered armor, staining Los red as well. Los tried to get up and fight back, but the dark power that was on the verge of death was even stronger than before, and it pressed him completely to the ground. The arc reactor's energy was almost depleted, not even enough to charge up enough energy to fire a single hand cannon shot. It's over. Los's mind went blank as he watched helplessly as his armor was torn apart, almost completely devouring the flesh and blood inside, which was no different from that of an ordinary person. If this continues, we'll die. Loss. Jordan struggled forward to try and rescue Los, but his leg injury caused him to fall to the ground. He gritted his teeth, transformed back into female form, and unleashed an energy attack on the black aura surrounding Los. However, the energy impact, being at a certain distance, struck the completely crazed Suins, and was utterly unable to shake him. Oh, and Kate too. Jordan hastily considered the situation, but quickly realized that even if Kate arrived at the scene now, it would be too late. Is anyone still here? Come quick, save Los. Jordan was desperate. So, you want to die together? Los lay on the ground, watching as the armor on his chest was about to be completely torn apart. He steeled himself and hugged the crazed Blackie tightly. Then let's go. He'd gone mad too. A blinding white light shone from their chests. The arc reactor doesn't have enough energy to fire a single-hand cannon shot, but it can self-destruct. Boom. With a burst of intense white light, fragments of energy, flesh and metal exploded, and Suins and Los were both thrown away. Jordan struggled to his feet and saw a dark-skinned body hanging from a tree, a bloody hole in its chest, blood flowing from its neck and chest. Even a superhuman is beyond dead. Los, you won, you won. Jordan's excited words came to an abrupt halt as he saw Los, who had been thrown onto the grass, his armor almost completely destroyed, his chest a bloody mess beyond recognition. Loss. Jordan stumbled and knelt before Los, his hand pressed against Los's chest, where his heart was barely beating. Pressing on her bleeding wound, she was extremely panicked, her voice trembling with tears. "Don't be afraid, hold on, I'll take you to the hospital right now." "No, I won't go to the hospital can't save me anyway." Los was coughing up blood and lay on the ground, barely breathing. He has X-ray vision, he knows his own body perfectly well. Now, in this world, no one can save him. Except for himself. Los asked weakly, "We've taken control of the school. Now, how long until dawn?" Jordan didn't understand what Los meant, but in his panic, he still glanced at the dawning sky and said, "It'll be soon, in about 10 minutes. This long night is about to end." But Los's body couldn't hold on any longer. Jordan was in tears. "I will not die." Los's eyes were glazed over, and his body was covered in wounds. He seemed to be on his deathbed, whispering as if he were holding on to his last breath. "I came into this world, and before I even stood at the pinnacle of it all, how could I possibly die like this?" Deep within the soul's space. Within the cage of red solar radiation, a hint of approval flickered in the eyes of the undead unjust Superman. "Kid, not bad, you're starting to resemble me back in the day." He paused for a moment, then said. "Conditions met, take what you want." Divider line. P.S. The Black Robe campus arc is almost over. I'm begging for your monthly votes to help it climb the new book charts. With American comics in a slump, fanfiction is facing difficulties. If the initial performance is poor, it won't get featured. If you've read this far and find the book somewhat to your liking, please continue reading and commenting daily, and if you have any monthly tickets, please consider supporting me. I'm begging you. 029 Praise the sun, Superman Los. The sky was already beginning to lighten, and the night was receding like the tide. At dawn today, the Godotkin University campus was eerily silent, devoid of birdsong or insect chirps, with a lingering smell of gunpowder near the school gate. Having completed her mental control over the personnel at the experimental base, Kate arrived late at the school gate area. The horrific scene that greeted her eyes made her instinctively cover her mouth, unable to believe her eyes. It is evident that the security booth is severely damaged, and a large area of paving stones in front of the school gate has cracked, leaving behind scorched earth and holes. The devastated ground was littered with fragments of armor and limbs, and splattered blood stained every corner, a testament to the intensity of the battle that had just taken place. On the grass stained with ashes and blood, Jordan, in her female form, was kneeling on the ground, her wounded body trembling slightly, with a familiar young man lying in front of her. Los. Kate's heart sank, and she hurriedly ran over. As she got closer, Kate's heart sank to the bottom. Los, lying unconscious on the grass, was seen. His chest was a bloody mess, and almost every part of his body was injured. His clothes were torn to shreds, let alone his steel armor. What exactly happened here? Kate's face turned pale as she knelt on the grass, pressing down on Los's still bleeding wounds along with Jordan. Jordan sighed, "It's Black. Black has come here." At this moment, Kate also noticed the elderly Black body hanging in a tree not far away, its tattered black battlesuit exactly the same as the one shown on television. The most mysterious member of the Super 7, Suance. "Did you win the fight?" Kate was incredulous, but she felt no joy at all, her hands feeling the rise and fall of the young man's chest and his increasingly faint heartbeat. Los's body was also getting cold, with such severe injuries, it would be difficult for him to withstand it. Kate gritted her teeth and asked urgently, "Why didn't you take him to the hospital immediately?" Jordan replied with a sob in his voice, "It was Los who told me not to take him to the hospital before he passed out." Her words quickly stopped. But then she saw Kate take off the scarf draped over her shoulder and use it to bandage Los's injured arm, while she lay down on her side on the lawn and gently hugged Los. Ignoring the blood and dirt stains on her stylish white dress, Kate's delicate and beautiful face wore a faint smile, as if trying to use her body heat to dispel the chill emanating from Ross. "You'll be all right, Los." Kate's eyes were filled with tears, but a comforting smile played on her lips, like a witch. Jordan didn't actually believe that Kate had any love for Ross, their previous intimacy seemed more like a tactic to curry favor with the powerful. But seeing this scene now, she admits she couldn't do it. Kate has a ruthless streak, once she invests, she truly invests everything she has. However, no matter what the two did, they couldn't keep up the temperature on Los's body. Feeling his heartbeat stop beneath his palm, Jordan looked at Los, whom Kate was holding tightly, filled with resentment and despair. It was so close. Now that Los is gone, what are we going to do? Jordan's mind went blank, completely unaware that an incredibly bright ray of light was breaking through the eastern horizon of the city at dawn. A beam of golden sunlight pierced through the sea of clouds, penetrated the morning mist and the shade of the trees, and fell into the campus. The blinding sunlight made Jordan instinctively look down, but he suddenly felt a subtle fluctuation coming from the cold chest of the young man beneath his palm. Real or fake? Jordan initially thought it was his imagination, but the undulations under his palms not only did not disappear, but instead became more intense, like an activated engine. Not only Jordan, but Kate, who was holding Los Angeles, could also directly feel the changes in the young man's body. The moment the sun rose, Los's previously cold body quickly warmed up, and he could hear the strong, powerful echo of his heartbeat even without his ear pressed against his chest. He's alive? Under the incredulous gazes of Jordan and Kate, Ross, bathed in the golden sunlight, was visibly healing his previously mangled chest and other severe wounds at a speed visible to the naked eye. Flesh and blood are reorganized, and skin is regenerated. In less than a minute, Los, who was lying on the lawn, had fully recovered and was breathing steadily. No, it's not as simple as just restoring it to its original state. Jordan was filled with doubt and couldn't help but reach out and touch Los's chest. It's one thing for a fatal injury to heal itself, but what's with the muscles and ABS that weren't there before suddenly starting to form? Moreover, the new skin is smooth and tough, like an ancient god statue cast in steel, and every strand of thick, dark hair is bathed in sunlight, giving the whole body a feeling of being reborn. This extraordinary transformation is even greater than her gender reversal. Jordan touched his chest and even tried to tap his pectoral muscles with his fingers, but Kate slapped it away. No, you're also possessive of your food, right? Jordan was both amused and exasperated, then met Los's wide, luminous eyes. God! She was so frightened that she plopped down on the lawn. Jordan, you're crying your eyes out a little too early. I still prefer your original poker face. Ross muttered under his breath, quickly sat up from the ground, and reached out to pet Kate, who was hanging around his neck. Los, are you all right? Kate looked at Los with surprise. It's all right. Los nodded and stood up. He stretched out his arms, basking in the morning sun's rays, and looked directly at the fiery sun in the sky, letting out a soft laugh. In fact, I'm in better shape than ever before. After defeating Suance, the goal of taking control of the school was achieved, and the engineered gene Kryptonian physique was obtained from the undead unjust Superman. Even if they are just Kryptonians with an engineering-type constitution who are not good at fighting, Kryptonians are still Kryptonians, with an absurdly high minimum potential. Los could clearly feel that this time was different from the previous ones. If the previous biofield and X-ray vision were like borrowing some of Superman's power from Psycho Injustice Superman. This time, however, he truly possessed a source of superhuman power. From the original superhuman genetic level, from the inside out, they began to transform into an engineered Kryptonian physique. Los could constantly sense that his power was growing stronger as he absorbed more and more yellow sunlight, and he believed that various superhuman powers would soon awaken. For example, the ability to convert sunlight into one's own physical power is the greatest source and foundation for Superman's ability to transcend all things. If a system existed, Los's mind would be constantly echoing, strength +1, constitution +1, as if endlessly stacking stats. Praise the sun, bathing in its light for new life. Let's go, we need to deal with the rest of the situation as soon as possible. Los stretched, waved to Kate and Jordan who were standing there in a daze, and walked towards the dark corpse hanging in the tree. Episode 030, The Awakening of Superman and number 039, S Power. That morning, Indira Shetty, the president of Godotkin University, called the Water Group headquarters to deliver an urgent message. Early last night, the school's number 1 ranked prodigy, Andre Anderson, ranked 6th, was. The two men attacked the principal's office together, killing more than a dozen armed men on the spot. Anderson was then killed by armed men. Xian Se, a member of the Super 7, rushed to the scene to stop it, but was grabbed by the mentally unstable Jin Tong and died in a self-destruction. The entire Wotech group was shaken by this and immediately covered up the news of Suance's death. After all, the Invisible Man was just murdered by the Butcher. If news were to spread that the second hero, Suance, had died, it would be a catastrophic blow to the status of the Super 7. The matter may seem to have come to an end, but it has only just begun. The next day, noon. The principal's office, after being thoroughly cleaned, has regained its original bright and beautiful appearance. Golden Boy and Anderson teamed up to attack the principal's office? Are you kidding me? Professor Brinkhoff, the second-in-command at Godotkin University, slammed his hands on his desk in anger, glaring at Principal Shetty in her chair. Professor Brinkhoff did not believe it. After all, the day before yesterday, Golden Boy and Anderson had come to him specifically to explain the abilities of that freshman named Los. But that very night, something unexpected happened. No matter how you look at it, Anderson's target for revenge wasn't the principal's office. But that's the truth, Ms. Shetty said calmly, spreading her hands. I don't believe it. Professor Brinkhoff narrowed his eyes and questioned. What about the student I'm studying named Los? Why isn't he in the lab and is still attending school normally? Before Ms. Shetty could answer, a young man's soft laughter came from outside the office door. Professor, let me answer this question for you. Who is it? Professor Brinkhoff turned around in surprise and saw the door to the principal's office open. A young man with black hair, dressed in a plain t-shirt and casual pants, walked in with a smile. On either side behind him, they were accompanied by a Chinese girl in a neutral black suit and a white girl in a stylish plain white dress. Jordan, Kate. Professor Brinkhoff was quite familiar with the two girls behind him. After all, they were the only two outstanding female students among the top 20, and had taken training courses at the Lamplighter Crime Fighting Academy. However, the two girls are clearly just there to set the stage, with the young students walking at the front as the main group. Loss, a freshman. He recognized the other person, and couldn't help but take a step back, leaning against the table with a blank and terrified expression. Shetty, why is he in the principal's office? Professor Brinkhoff, clinging to his last glimmer of hope, looked at the headmistress behind him, only to find Shetty quickly getting up to give up the main chair in her office. Lois sat down directly on the leather principal's chair, crossed his legs, placed his hands on the table, and calmly looked at Professor Brinkhofer. He asked softly, Professor, do I need to explain further? Despite the gaze being directed upwards, Professor Brinkhofer felt as if he were being looked down upon, a sense of oppression making it difficult for him to breathe. He spent decades at Godotkin University and published numerous professional books. He had seen all sorts of criminals, heroes, financial tycoons, and politicians, yet he was suddenly overwhelmed by a student in terms of sheer presence. He was just a freshman, yet he seemed to be naturally superior to everyone else. Professor Brinkhoff opened his mouth, but could only shake his head and sigh, as if he had aged more than 10 years in an instant, with Jordan and Kate blocking his way out from behind. The principal's chair rotates. Lois looked out at the campus bathed in bright sunlight, feeling full of pride. From this moment forward, Godotkin University officially belongs to him. From now on, no ordinary person will dare to speak loudly to him. From this moment forward, the world will begin to bow down and submit. This is the confidence that comes with superhuman power. Have Kate stay in the principal's office and use her mind to control Professor Brinkhoff. Lois left the office with Jordan in her female form. Jordan kept glancing sideways at Lois. Lois gave her a disapproving look. What's so interesting about being in the same dorm every day? No, Jordan shook his head and said, you've changed quite a bit these past few days. She remembers the first night they lived together in the dormitory. The next day, when Lois woke up, Jordan also felt this transformation. At that time, his eyes were just brighter and more spirited. And in the last 2 days, after that great battle, Lois, who had healed himself, underwent a transformation both inside and out. His hair became thick and strong, and his skin improved, with almost no blemishes. His already handsome and sunny features became even more rugged and dashing, like a sculpture carved with a knife. His physique was also perfected by the shaping of his muscles, making him a perfect clothes hanger. Even in the most ordinary clothes, they look like models, exuding a natural confidence and domineering aura. If Golden Boy could be compared to him before, he is now inferior to Lois in every way. Jordan, momentarily confused, asked, where do we go now? An underground experimental base, perhaps? Lois paused for a moment, deciding it was a good opportunity to test the results of his recent sunbathing. The underground experimental base of Godotkin University. Let me go. Let me go. The angry roars, like the growls of a wild beast, echoed throughout the underground base, causing the oppressive air to vibrate slightly. Inside a specially made laboratory, the curly-haired youth, restrained on a metal chair by a steel bar the size of his wrist and controlled by numbing drugs, struggled incessantly, causing the steel bar to tighten and twist. Lois and Jordan arrived at the laboratory. Upon seeing someone arrive, Sam struggled even more violently, and the metal chair began to creak under the strain. As expected, Lois looked at the agitated Sam and nodded to himself. Kate's mind control abilities can achieve absolute brainwashing control over ordinary people, but her control over equally superhuman beings weakens over time. Especially for superhumans like Sam, with high ability stats, they will get rid of it very quickly. Lois opened the lab door and said to Jordan beside him, let him go. Are you serious? Jordan swallowed hard. She already knew how terrifying Sam was. His physique was stronger than that of an adult elephant. Once the shackles are broken, his male form will only be a speed bump, unable to stop him at all. Also, Jordan knew that Lois had not yet built a second set of Iron Man armor. It's okay, open it. Lois smiled slightly, rotated his arm, and his slender limbs made a crisp sound like popping beans. Jordan listened to Lois's words and carefully stepped forward to remove the shackles from Sam's body. The steel shackles were removed, and he landed on the ground the instant they touched the ground. Sam looked up and smiled cruelly. The metal chair beneath him was kicked backward, instantly denting and breaking down. He let out a low growl and accelerated toward Jordan like a human-shaped truck. Fuck. Jordan stepped back in alarm and saw Los step forward and throw a punch at Sam. A sudden gust of wind swept through the dull laboratory, and Sam, who was rushing forward and crashing into things just a moment ago, was sent flying backward like a metal chair. 031 Graduation means reaching the pinnacle of the world in black robes? Boom. The underground experimental base trembled slightly. Watching Sam being sent flying by a punch from Los, not only was Jordan stunned, but even the out-of-control Sam froze for a moment. With his back against the titanium alloy protective wall of the laboratory, he watched Los still swinging his fist and continued to rush forward, refusing to believe it. This time, as Sam took his running start, he used all his strength to punch Los, the punch so fast that it left after images in a gust of wind. Los calmly watched Sam. He stood still without dodging, only throwing a punch at the very end. There was no build-up of energy, no running start. Los's punch, however, struck first and collided heavily with Sam's blood-stained fist. Fist to fist. A battle of physical strength, a contest of pure power. Bang. A strong gust of wind surged outwards, centered on the two people. Jordan's eyes widened in surprise. It was clearly a clash of fists, yet it generated a powerful impact, as if an energy was exploding. What she found even more unbelievable was that Sam, the most powerful experimental subject at Godotkin University, was once again forced back several steps during this punching exchange, while Los stood still in place. Keep in mind that Los is not carrying any steel armor right now. Come on, Sam, is that all? Los clenched his fist, as if he had found a bit of amusement, and a slight smile appeared on his lips. In the past day or two, under the yellow sunlight, the two most basic abilities of the Kryptonian superhero have begun to awaken. Super strength and an iron body. Los could feel that his body was full of seemingly inexhaustible strength, and his condition was better than ever before. He easily snapped a steel bar when he got up this morning. He was worried about not having a suitable sandbag to test his skills when Sam, out of control, crashed into it. Could Sam, that lunatic, possibly tolerate Los's mocking words? Ignoring the pain in his fist, he charged at Los again in a fit of rage. Come. Los rolled up his shirt sleeves and began to fight with Sam. Sam's strength stats are simply high, he doesn't have many combat skills. Los didn't dodge at all, and took Sam's full force punch head-on with his chest. Sam felt as if he had struck a steel wall harder than a titanium alloy protective wall, and could not budge it an inch. Los's uppercut landed squarely on Sam's lower abdomen, sending him flying off the ground and arching like a ripe mantis shrimp. The next powerful series of punches slammed Sam, who was in midair, into the ground. The laboratory floor cracked, and countless fragments of stone shot outwards with a strong gust of wind. Jordan, fearing he would be caught in the crossfire, had already retreated outside the lab. Through the thick protective glass, he stared in astonishment at Sam being unilaterally ravaged by Los. It's not that Sam is too weak, but that Los is too strong. A crushing defeat in pure strength and physical attributes. Jordan also noticed something that defied common sense. Under Sam's punch, which unleashed a force of over 10 tons, Los's body not only withstood it, but even his ordinary shirt remained undamaged. This puzzled her greatly. In fact, this is the effect of the biofield under the blessing of superpower. Under Los's control, the force was no longer a single point, but covered the entire body, even the clothes and shoes clinging to the body were perfectly covered. Like an inviolable, intimate physical position. As long as Sam's strength doesn't exceed that of Los, he won't even be able to tear the clothes, the effect is comparable to a miracle. Dong dong. It was like a giant's warhammer violently pounding the earth. Los grabbed Sam's right foot and slammed him against the lab floor, quickly creating 2 holes. The wind howled, and rocks flew everywhere. Again. Los laughed wildly, tossing Sam against the titanium alloy wall with one hand, his eyes flashing a faint red light. Having just finished warming up, he was enveloped in white steam, his steel-like muscles slightly bulging his shirt, making him look like an alien god. He was about to continue his attack when Sam, bruised and battered, raised his hands and shouted, "No, I'm not fighting anymore." Bang! Los's fist swiftly swept past Sam's ear and slammed into the titanium alloy protective wall of the laboratory, creating a terrifying half-meter-wide dent. "You're awake." Los looked at Sam in surprise. "Actually, I've been sober for a while now." Sam covered his swollen face and said bitterly, "But just thinking about the night before last makes me feel like I'm about to have a mental breakdown." He just wanted to vent his anger, but he was completely stunned by Los's attack. Los retracted his fist. He turned and walked out of the lab, leaving behind the final words, "Anyway, your brother Jintung didn't blame you that night." Sam slid down the wall and sat on the ground, covering his already wet eyes. "Walk out of Sam's lab." Ross lowered his rolled-up shirt sleeves and looked at Jordan, who was staring blankly. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." You're way more exaggerated than a ghost. Jordan, his mouth dry, couldn't help but ask, what exactly has changed in your body? Los shrugged and casually said, I used to be able to enhance matter, and now I've discovered I can enhance my own body too. I see, Jordan said, suddenly realizing. This was the reason Los came up with to rationalize the engineered Kryptonian physique, since the source of Superman's power was his biggest secret. After his match with Sam, Los gained a better understanding of his current situation. After just 1 or 2 days of converting to yellow solar radiation, he was able to suppress Sam, the strongest experimental subject with a strength of over 10 tons, solely through his physical strength and steel body. If he continues to bask in the sun for a few more months, he should be able to roam freely in the world of Black Robes. As for the day he graduates from Godotkin University 3 years later, all Los can say is that even if he doesn't quickly reach his homeland, he'll still be bombed. Of course, Los didn't actually know the Homelander's exact strength. Many American comic book works from the past lacked expressive power due to budget constraints. Los felt that defining real combat power based solely on vague concepts from his past life was unrealistic and far too arrogant. Superman may be arrogant, but the injustice of the dead and Superman's crushing defeat will forever serve as a warning to Los. I not only possess superhuman strength, but also knowledge that transcends time. Los thought to himself, when facing an opponent with insufficient information, I can first use the Iron Man armor to test the enemy, fully confirm the opponent's combat strength, and then use Superman's power to crush them. Imagine the despair of the enemy when they have fought tooth and nail to shatter the steel armor and think they have won everything, only to find a steel body wearing an S-shaped totem suit emerging from the armor. Phase 1, Support Type Superpowers, Los. Phase 2, Steel Armor Loss. Phase 3, Superman Ross. Besides, I'm only 18 years old, and I can keep getting stronger just by sunbathing. Los wasn't in a hurry, time was on his side. 032 goal, King of the World. Just the physique of an engineered Kryptonian superhuman is enough to completely transform me and give me the confidence to become the strongest creature in the Black Robe world. Los couldn't help but feel a little emotional. So, what about Kryptonian physiques, which are specifically designed for combat and have a combat-oriented genetic type? He could clearly feel that, in addition to his basic super strength and steel body, the speed at which his brain was processing information was also continuously increasing. A super brain. This should be a standard talent for Kryptonians with engineered genes. The Stark Industries knowledge that Iron Man's ghost previously mentioned, which would take a year to fully digest, may now be fully digested in a month or even a week. Boss, what are you thinking about? Jordan looked at Los with curiosity. Now, her role was almost entirely that of an assistant, which was an outward manifestation of Los's growing prestige. Los chuckled softly, thinking about our future goal, to control the world. Jordan thought it was just a joke, but he never expected that Ross was not lying this time. After taking control of the campus, their goal is the whole world. Jordan looked at the students and researchers imprisoned inside the underground experimental facility and asked, what will happen to this underground experimental facility? After thinking for a moment, Los made the arrangements. For test subjects in good mental condition, Kate can erase their memories and allow them to return to school. Those who are not in good mental condition, like Sam, will remain in the lab for now and receive treatment. He paused, then continued, as for the researchers, let them continue their work. Hearing this, Jordan looked at Los blankly, continue working. Right. Los nodded, looking around the underground experimental base. Previously, the goal of the experiments here was to develop a virus that could control all superhumans. Now, the research focus has shifted to further improving compound number 5. Los's eyes were sharp. He knew that I, Jordan, and most of the superhumans in this world were injected with compound V2 in our childhood. In this world of Black Robes, there was an even more potent first-generation compound, Compound 5, which was 10 times more effective than the ordinary second-generation Compound 5 and could even grant immortality. Even Superman ages, but the process is much slower under the yellow sunlight. If one could further enhance their material conversion ability through Compound number 5 and achieve the effect of maintaining immortality, Los would naturally not refuse. Due to the major upheavals at the university, including the deaths of Golden Boy, Anderson, and Black, Godotkin University is currently on an indefinite leave of absence. Jordan took advantage of this time to go off campus to look for a location for the steel body industries. It happened on the morning of the 3rd day. In her female form, Jordan wore a neat suit and black-rimmed glasses, and her previously poker face made her look more like a business elite. She led Los out of a white Bugatti sports car. This sports car was a new purchase for Los to use as a daily driver. He originally wanted to buy any car he wanted, but according to Jordan, if he wanted to do business in New York, he had to maintain a certain level of prestige. The rich second-generation persona makes it faster and easier for them to start from scratch. Since he gained the ability to convert gold with his superpowers, in Los's eyes, money is just money. He listened to Jordan and bought the sports car to serve as an internal vehicle for company employees. As he stepped out of the sports car, Los surveyed the vast abandoned factory before him. Jordan explained, this was one of the largest steel mills in New York City in the last century, but it went out of business more than a decade ago due to industrial relocation. The location is 19 kilometers from the headquarters of the Water Group and 21 kilometers from Gottingen University. There are no commercial disputes. You can buy the commercial land, including all the equipment, simply by paying a sufficient sum of money. That's enough, Ross interrupted Jordan. He stood in front of the main building of the huge factory, basking in the warm morning sun, and casually said, "This will do. From now on, you can handle these small matters as you see fit." Jordan was speechless. Little things? This is a huge deal worth over $70 million. That makes sense, though, for this guy, money can only ever get the simplest things done. Jordan asked, now that the location is chosen and the industry can be established quickly, do we need to recruit employees now? Ross glanced at her and said matter-of-factly, with you, me, and Kate, the three of us are enough. Hey! Jordan was dumbfounded. This is a huge factory that covers more than an acre. Moreover, Los and Kate don't really care about anything. You could say that Los is the only future employee of this industry. Los smiled. He founded the Steel Body Industries, but all he needed was a suitable site to build and house supercomputers, satellites, various steel armors, and new elemental energy reactors. With artificial intelligence and a steel army operating 24/7, what will employees be needed to do? But Jordan wanted to say something more, but then he saw something flash before his eyes and it was rapidly approaching. Oh! Los narrowed his eyes, sensing something first, but made no move. The next instant, rusty blades, sharp steel pipes, and thin pieces of wire, a multitude of metal objects approached Los, stopping near his eyes, neck, and even his skin. Loss. A sudden attack. Jordan instinctively wanted to unleash an energy blast, but Los stopped him by waving his hand. Faced with the dense array of metal objects surrounding him, Los calmly said, "Don't worry about me, find somewhere to hide." Jordan seemed to have thought of something. She was in the most danger right now, so she nodded quickly and retreated to a distance. Los stared directly at the blade's tip, which was inches away, and asked, "Aren't you going to come out?" "No need to ask." A deep male voice with electronic accents rang out. Los lowered his eyes and saw a communicator that floated closer. The communicator continued to speak, "Los, freshman at Gottingen University. I know your ability to detonate nearby objects, so I won't come near you." Los shrugged and asked, "So, what do you want with me?" The man on the other end of the communicator said quickly, "I need to know the truth about Andre Anderson's death." "I understand," Los nodded. In fact, upon seeing the remotely controlled metal, he knew who the attackers were. Gottingen University board member and Anderson's father. Two extremes. The opponent also possesses the ability to manipulate metal, and is clearly more powerful than Anderson. They are also well aware of the limitations of their own abilities, and choose to remotely control the metal hostage, demonstrating their extensive experience. If it were me a week ago, I might have really suffered a great loss. Pity. How could the two extremes, who had gathered intelligence on the past, know about Los's recent changes? 033 The growing Superman and the pirated Magneto. The two individuals secretly conducted extensive investigations and learned about their son Anderson and Los's activities at school, so they did not believe the school's explanation. Therefore, he chose to kidnap Los outside the campus when he left. Hidden in the shadows, the man with the two poles spoke coldly into a walkie-talkie, "Los, I will never let you go until I give you the truth and an answer." At the same time, inside the abandoned factory, in front of a walkie-talkie, under the remote manipulation of the powerful magnetic field, all the metal objects surrounding Los vibrated and almost completely approached his body surface. Los stared expressionlessly at the sharp piece of metal hovering below him and spoke into the walkie-talkie. "Anderson died by my hand." The other end of the walkie-talkie suddenly went silent. "So you just admit it like that?" The two groups of people could hardly believe their ears. As he had originally planned, the student named Los would vehemently deny it, and then, under the agonizing torture of being manipulated by magnetism, would painfully reveal the truth. To my utter surprise, the other party revealed the truth before I even had a chance to force them. Moreover, Los's tone showed no remorse, as if his son Anderson had died a worthy death. "Yes, your son deserves to die." As if knowing what the two people in the shadows were thinking, Los spoke calmly. He raised his right hand and pinched the tip of a piece of iron hanging in front of his eyes with 2 fingers. Los bluntly stated, "He used the school's resources to try and make me a guinea pig. After failing, he tried to kill me himself, but I ended up killing him instead. No. My son has always been a kind person. He's always wanted to be a hero and would never hurt anyone. This is slander." The two-pole man shouted angrily. You, this so-called hero, a member of the board of trustees of Godotkin University, haven't you also been allowing the human experimentation base to exist all along? Los chuckled softly, glancing sideways at an abandoned building about 200 meters to his right. So many parents' sons have died in the underworld, now it's just your son's turn. You. The two men trembled, not only because Los had torn away their so-called heroic facade, but also because of the scars of losing their sons. But, by observing the surveillance equipment installed around the factory, the two people could confirm that Los was looking towards their hiding place. Is the other person looking at him? But how could that be? Not to mention that they are 200 meters apart, which is difficult to observe with human eyesight, there are also several abandoned factory walls in between. Something's not right with this student. The two people were both shocked and furious. Looking at the black-haired youth on the monitor screen, they clasped their hands together in prayer. The next instant, the magnetic field surged, and numerous remotely controlled metal objects all rushed towards Los, enveloping him and turning him into an Iron Man. Were they killed? The two men in the shadows knelt on one knee, their foreheads covered in beads of sweat, their hands clasped together, staring intently at the figure on the monitor screen. Even though numerous metals completely covered the other party's body, the magnetic field was strong enough to crush a car. But this time the feel is different from usual. The two people were panting, and no matter how much they manipulated the numerous metal objects to contract, they all stopped on the target's body surface and could not be squeezed at all. It was as if an inviolable, mysterious aura existed around the young man. Click! The metal that formed the Iron Man cracked open, and one foot stepped out from the core of the magnetic field first, from which a young man emerged unharmed. Without even a tear in his clothes, Los was the first to flick the piece of metal he was holding. With the force of hundreds of tons, the iron sheet was like a sniper bullet, accompanied by a sharp whooshing sound. The sheet metal pierced through several walls almost instantly, traversing a distance of about 200 meters, and precisely reached the hiding place of the two groups of people. The wall was pierced by a piece of iron, and the blinding sunlight from outside illuminated the previously dim interior. Damn it! The two people stared wide-eyed in fear at the broken wall in front of them and the high-speed iron plate that gleamed eerily in the sunlight. Although it looked like a piece of metal, it had no effect on the magnetic field and had obviously been converted into another substance. Is this all the other party is capable of? In that instant, the two men vaguely understood the reason for their son's defeat. Bang! The metal plate struck him squarely in the chest, sending the two men crashing backward into a wall. They secretly patted their titanium alloy battle suits, feeling a sense of relief. Just now, I really thought I was going to die. Where did he go? The two people hurriedly checked the surveillance screen, only to find that Los, who was originally in the abandoned factory, had disappeared. The factory site is now just a pile of metal fragments and a cracked floor with obvious footprints. No way. The two men had a bad feeling and subconsciously looked at the gap in the wall where the sunlight was shining in. The wall exploded in the next instant. A young man leaped in from outside. Although Los hasn't learned to fly yet, a jump is enough to cover a distance of 200 meters. Is this even human? The two men felt a chill run down their spines, vaguely seeing the shadow of Homelander in Los. He let out a low growl, forcefully raised his hands, and exerted all his magnetic field manipulation abilities. At that moment, the metal objects in the abandoned building trembled, and surveillance equipment, knives, steel bars, and other items swept towards Los. Faced with this astonishing scene, Los simply threw a single punch forward. Hum! The air surged, and numerous hard metal objects were blasted apart like bubbles by a fist. Los stepped forward, the intertwined strong magnetic fields unable to stop him. The metal was peeled away layer by layer until he reached the two polar beings who were suffering from severe headaches due to excessive energy depletion. He looked down at the middle-aged black man whose face resembled Anderson's. If it were someone like Magneto, it might cause some trouble for me during my current developmental stage. Unfortunately, the magnitude difference is too great, and excessive use of magnetic field manipulation can lead to severe headaches. The two men knelt on the ground, staring at the young man's shoes approaching, clutching their heads in anguish, and cried out, "Kill me! Letting you die like this would be too good for you." Los shook his head. The students' experimental subjects have now been mostly rescued from the underground experimental base of Godotkin University, and materials are needed to study Compound 5. The hero and school board member who once condoned human experiments on campus probably never imagined that he would one day become an experimental subject himself. The white Bugatti sports car drove back to Godotkin University. When they were still a few kilometers away, Los's cell phone suddenly rang in the passenger seat. He checked his phone and found that Kate had sent him several messages. "Is someone looking for me?" Los opened the first message and raised an eyebrow slightly. At school, Kate could usually handle most things for him. Besides, in the current world of Black Robes, he doesn't have many friends. Wrong. Instead of scrolling down the information, Los quickly glanced in the direction of the school. His recently awakened supervision, combined with farsightedness and X-ray vision, has allowed him to clearly see visitors arriving at the campus. Stars and striped capes shimmer in the sunset over the campus. 034 Homelander in Los Angeles. Jordan, stop the car. Lois spoke in a deep voice. Jordan, in the driver's seat, was a little surprised, but he still obeyed the instructions and stepped on the brake, pulling over to the side of the road on the main road. Don't go back to school. Put the two people in the factory first. It's not safe at school now. Lois gave a word of advice and quickly got out of the passenger seat. He flagged down a taxi on the roadside and quickly got back to Godotkin University. Once inside the campus, Lois could see without superhuman vision. On the restored lawn of the campus, a group of college students surrounded a dark-haired man wearing a cape with the American flag, asking for his autograph with awe and excitement. In the setting sun, a striped and star-patterned cape fluttered in the breeze, and the smile on the man's face, dressed in a blue battle suit, was even brighter than the sunlight. Homelander readily agreed to autograph requests from students until he caught sight of Lois walking in through the school gate, at which point he smiled and said, "All right, all right." He blinked and said gently, "Let me have a word with Lois." The students surrounding the Homelander then dispersed, giving the two of them space to talk. "Mr. Homelander, it's nice to see you again." Lois stepped forward with a smile, while pondering the purpose of the Homelander's visit. To investigate the death of Suance, a member of the Super 7? Although Lois had erased all evidence, most of the century-old equipment in the dormitory was also secretly moved, and the underground experimental base was also reinforced with zinc alloy. But for those with exceptional eyesight, a thorough investigation might actually uncover some clues at the school. "Yes, we meet again." Homelander spread his hands and laughed. "I didn't just pass by this time, I came here specifically to find you. If it were any other college student, they would probably be incredibly excited. After all, the person in front of them is the #1 hero. Is it a bird? Or an airplane? No, they're Homelanders." Only Lois sighed inwardly. Being targeted by Homelander was no good thing. Fortunately, given his current physical condition, he is able to control his heartbeat. Lois's heart skipped a beat, but he smiled and said, "It's my pleasure. Don't get too excited yet, I have even better news for you." Homelander walked side by side with Lois on campus, hands behind his back, like a senior and junior. He said smugly, "You did a good job last time, so I've decided to add you to the Super 7. Join the 7. Lois was stunned. This really was good news. It seems I overestimated the importance of black in the hearts of the Chinese people. For Homelanders, actively using supervision might be too much of a hassle, and there's absolutely no need to re-examine deceased members. Seeking suitable new members to join is the right approach." Homelander glanced at Lois. "What, you don't want to join the 7 and become a hero?" "No." Lois shook his head and said, "I'm just worried that as a freshman, I'm not qualified to be a member of the Super 7 and that people will question me." "Rest assured." Homelander patted him on the shoulder, a smirk playing on his lips, and said arrogantly, "If I say you can do it, you can do it. I'm the one who calls the shots at Vought Corporation." "Certainly." He changed the subject and continued, "Due to some internal reasons within the Vought group, you can only replace Suance and join the Super 7 wearing his battle suit for now." "Me, Suance?" Lois pointed to his own nose and suddenly realized something. The Vought group didn't want to reveal Suance's death, so they needed someone to continue playing the role of Suance. In any case, the ever-mysterious Suance has never shown his face. Homelander wanted to recruit Lois to the 7, but since the Invisible Man's position had been assigned by headquarters, they chose to have Lois become the Black. Lois asked, "Could you give me a moment to think about it?" "No problem." Homelander answered decisively, but patted Lois on the shoulder heavily and said earnestly, "But I have high hopes for you. Think it over carefully. Give me your answer tomorrow." "Oh, right." As if remembering something, he looked at Lois and smiled. "Last time you helped find the Invisible Man, I said I would reward you. What extra reward would you like?" The people of the motherland suddenly felt that sometimes they needed to motivate their subordinates. This is the true method of those in power. Following Homelander's lead, Lois casually said, "Let's go with what Mr. Homelander says." The man rested his chin on his hand, thought seriously for a moment, and suddenly thought of a good reward. He said with a serious face, "John." He put his arm around Lois's shoulder, a smug look on his face, and said, "I specifically allowed you to call me by my real name in everyday life. Like it, right?" This novel brain circuit and reward made Lois give a thumbs up. Homelander, "No, Mr. John, all I can say is, this is absolutely fantastic." That night. Godotkin University, student dormitory. Kate looked at Ross in astonishment. "Ross, are you really going to join the Super 7 and become the second Black?" Jordan was also surprised and said, "Yeah, boss, didn't you say that wasn't a real hero organization?" Homelander specifically asked me to join, I had no choice. Lois shrugged. He is still in a period of rapid development and does not want to directly confront the Patriot, who is in his prime. As time goes on, his win rate against Homelanders will continue to increase until he completely dominates them. In addition, Lois is not actually opposed to joining the Super 7. This may be an opportunity, a chance to take control of the world. Lois said softly. Now, the Vought Corporation is gradually taking control of America, and joining as a second-generation Black can transform that into his own power. Lois suddenly remembered. In some American comic book settings within the boys' universe, Black is a superhuman with the same physique as Homelander, and his very existence is to kill Homelander. Unexpectedly, things have come full circle. He killed Suance and became the second-generation Suance, thus fulfilling this requirement. Having made the decision, Lois looked at the two people in the dormitory and immediately gave instructions. Kate, you will stay at Godotkin University, take over the underground experimental base, specialize in Compound V, and cultivate extraordinary forces. Jordan, you will be primarily responsible for the development of steel body industries. Kate and Jordan both nodded in agreement. Lois believed it. In the not-too-distant future, they will possess the power to shake the world. 3 days later. Downtown New York City, bustling with traffic. Lois stood in front of the Vought Group headquarters, gazing at the towering skyscrapers before him. He wore a black battlesuit that resembled Suance, but it was made of a thinner, more form-fitting material and had a light-absorbing coating that did not affect the absorption of sunlight. Fate can be truly wondrous at times. Lois thought about how, shortly after arriving in this world, he teamed up with Homelander to save the plane. And now, he has actually joined the Seven, becoming a junior and teammate mentored by Homelander. Just as Lois was about to enter the gate, a shimmering figure in a short-skirted uniform approached from behind. Those were also members of the Super 7. Starlight. 036, the most arrogant rookie hero in history. Hearing the commotion in the corridor, Queen Maeve immediately rushed from the conference hall. She frowned deeply and couldn't help but exclaim, "Deep Sea, are you suppressing newcomers again?" Queen Maeve stepped into the corridor and noticed that Starlight, who was watching from there, had a strange expression on his face. She looked ahead again and was quickly stunned. It was clear that the newly arrived second-generation Suance was standing unharmed in the corridor, while Shenhai was lying on the ground, clutching his lower abdomen in pain. On their very first day, a new employee bullied an elderly person? This is going against the natural order. Although the combat power of the deep sea is greatly reduced when it is on land, it is still something that ordinary superhumans cannot handle. Queen Maeve observed the black armor. It was thinner than the first generation of black armor, yet it displayed perfect muscle curves as if forged from steel. Hearing the other person's young yet assertive voice, she felt a strange sense of familiarity. Deep Sea clutched his lower abdomen, feeling Starlight's gloating gaze. Compared to the physical pain, he felt his prestige and dignity had been shattered. He was careless and didn't dodge. "I never expected a newcomer to dare to make a move. You bastard, how dare you hit me?" Deep Sea glared angrily, but before he could finish speaking, Lois strode forward and kicked him in the upturned face. Just as Shenhai was about to get up and fight back, he was caught off guard and knocked down again, his face quickly swelling up. "Trying to bully me again, hey?" The second-generation Black Lois seemed to be young and vigorous, so he simply added another kick, making the redness and swelling on Deep Sea's face symmetrical. The Deep Sea lay on the ground like a fish that had come ashore, its mouth agape, spewing air bubbles, almost steaming with anger. "Fuck, who's bullying whom here?" Lois stopped acting altogether and directly stomped on the head, acting as arrogantly as the number one villain. He warned the Deep Sea, "If you see me again, take a detour, understand? Fuck you." Deep Sea's eyes turned red, and he flipped himself up, ready to fight the second-generation Black Lost to the death. "That's enough." A strong gust of wind swept by. A black man wearing goggles and a blue bodysuit appeared as if by teleportation, reaching out to stop the raging Deep Sea. At the same time, a white woman dressed in a retro dark armor dress appeared, blocking the way for the second-generation Black Lost, separating him from the Deep Sea. Lois calmly watched the man and woman who had appeared. These are none other than the other two veteran members of the Seven, A-Train and Queen Maeve. These two members are far superior to those in the Deep Sea in terms of both status and strength. A locomotive has the power to pull a train, and more importantly, it can move at supersonic speeds. Queen Maeve possesses extraordinary strength and physical defense, with astonishing stats. Deep Sea struggled against the locomotive's grasp, shouting angrily, "Locomotive, let me go. I have to kick him twice. Normally, I wouldn't bother stopping you." The locomotive lowered its voice and announced, "The Fatherlanders are almost here. People of the motherland." The name itself seemed to carry a sense of oppression, making the atmosphere in the top-floor corridor solemn. The Deep Sea, which had been burning with anger and acting recklessly, seemed to have been doused with a bucket of cold water from head to toe, and suddenly calmed down. Newbie, you're lucky. Deep Sea glared at Los angrily. Los raised his middle finger, showing no sign of backing down, and said, if you want to step on my head, I'm ready anytime. The locomotive frowned slightly and looked at Los. Although Deep Sea was the one who started it with his foul mouth, this newcomer is just too arrogant and lawless. Queen Maeve gazed thoughtfully at the second-generation Black. She recognized the voice. At that moment, the elevator doors opened. A Homelander, draped in a cape with the American flag draped behind his back, smiled and clapped his hands as he stepped out of the elevator. All right, now that everyone's here, let's begin the meeting. The top floor of the Water Group headquarters, the Heroes Conference Hall. The large floor-to-ceiling windows offer a panoramic view of half of the bustling New York City. Under the leadership of the people of the motherland. Los sat down in the original black seat, and the other members took their seats, leaving only the former Invisible Man's seat empty. Homelander glanced at the empty seat, then looked at Los and smiled, new member, please introduce yourself to everyone. Los spread his hands casually and said, just as Deep Sea said, I'm here to play the role of Suance. You can just call me Suance. He paused, then continued, my ability is to enhance matter, and I can also temporarily enhance my own body. If you need your battlesuits repaired in the future, you can come to me. The heroes each had their own thoughts about Los's self-introduction. Queen Maeve nodded to herself. Enhanced matter? It really was him. Starlight looked at Los and suddenly felt that this newcomer was not bad. Anyway, going against the Deep Sea makes you a good person. As for Shenhai, he was covering his slightly swollen face and secretly clenching his fists under the conference table. Strengthening matter, isn't that a support ability? How could I have been humiliated by a newbie with support abilities stepping on my head? The locomotive was a little lost in thought before finally looking at Los. He shook his groggy head. Strengthening substances? I wonder if they can strengthen compound number 5, we don't have enough. Homelander, with a faint smile on his face, encouraged Los, who had just finished his self-introduction, by saying, won't you say a few more words? Then. Los hesitated for a moment, then said in his last breath, thank you, Mr. John, Queen Maeve, Locomotive, and Starlight, for your continued guidance. The Deep Sea is furious. This newcomer was eventually even removed from the list of the 7. Deep Sea was about to complain to Homelander when he suddenly felt the atmosphere was very heavy. Queen Maeve and Starlight looked unwell, and the dark-faced A-Train was also sitting uneasily with a pale face. By the way, the Deep Sea was only aware of things later. What did that new guy call Homelander here? John? Deep in the sea, he was overjoyed. This newcomer is doomed. You should know that people from the motherland are most averse to being called by their first name. The meeting room was silent for 3 seconds, until Homelander's applause broke the silence. The Homelander laughed happily, good, very good. Let's give a round of applause and welcome the new Suance. The members were taken aback at first, then clapped their hands in unison, turning the previously oppressive atmosphere in the meeting room into a cheerful one. Deep Sea machinery clapped, looking at the second-generation Black Los in disbelief, then at the Homelander sitting in the main seat with a bright, sunny smile. It's dark. Nobody knows. In fact, Los had already been there the moment he entered the headquarters of the Water Group. He awakened a sliver of his supervision and discovered that Homelander was spying on him from above New York. Within the 7, this group of heroes, there exists an internal code similar to that of Godotkin University. Might makes right. Therefore, in the face of the bullying and provocation from the old member Deep Sea, Los chose to retaliate with thunderous measures at the first moment. Besides, another crucial point is that Los was personally recommended by Homelander. Under these circumstances, the more Los Angeles tries to appear weak and keep a low profile, the less it will please its own people. The more arrogant and lawless Los is, the more Homelander derives pleasure from it. Homelander would see this as an extension of his prestige, a perfect opportunity to use his junior, Los, to suppress other hero members. 038 Homelander, Los, he understands me. After the meeting of the Super 7. As a second-generation black-clad Los, he had no work assignments today, so he returned to the detached apartment in the wealthy area assigned to him by the Water Group headquarters. As they left the headquarters building, Queen Maeve struck up a conversation with Ross, want to grab a drink tonight. Los guessed that Queen Maeve had already recognized him and that they would be working together in the future, so he simply agreed. Okay, you decide on the time and place. The day. As night falls, the already bustling metropolis of New York City shines even brighter and more prosperous under the dazzling lights. A high-end bar next to an apartment building in an affluent neighborhood. Los changed out of his dark-colored battlesuit and walked into the bar like an ordinary customer without attracting anyone's attention. Upon entering, you'll see a large bar illuminated by gentle lighting, with cabinets displaying a variety of expensive wines from around the world, and classical music in the style of vinyl records flowing like a stream. Compared to before, Kate's freshman party was a blast of booming music, flashing lights, energetic dancing, and surging hormones. The bar here has a quiet and more romantic atmosphere, but the prices are very high, and there aren't many customers. As soon as Ross entered the store, he saw Queen Maeve sitting alone in a corner booth. Queen Maeve had changed out of her retro armor and was now wearing a figure-hugging red dress that accentuated her mature curves. So it really is you, Los, the second-generation Black. Queen Maeve was not surprised by Los's appearance, after all, she had identified him by his voice during the day. But when Los approached the booth, she couldn't help but be surprised and her eyes widened. The young Asian man in front of me looked much more handsome than he had a month ago, with clean and smooth skin, and his perfect physique filled out his suit. His jet black hair was glossy, and his eyes were bright and expressive, radiating a sunny and confident aura from within. What happened to you in the past month? Queen Maeve couldn't help but ask. If things were slightly better for the Middle Eastern refugees a month ago. Now, he's practically some Wall Street rich kid who came out of nowhere. Does Godotkin University really teach people? Los sat down in the booth opposite Queen Maeve and chuckled, he's being kept by a rich woman at school. That rich woman is eating really well. Queen Maeve's eyes sparkled, and she covered her mouth, laughing merrily. After a brief chat, and with the alcohol on their lips, the two became much more comfortable with each other. Los and Queen Maeve quickly discussed matters concerning the Super 7. Queen Maeve narrowed her eyes and pondered, it's not good that you offended the Deep Sea on your very first day, but the Deep Sea's status isn't that high. She paused for a moment, then continued, to gain a foothold in the Super 7, besides having a good relationship with the leader, you also need to increase your own popularity. Having fans supporting you is the best. Popularity. Los nodded to himself. The Seven were less a team of heroes and more a top idol group that combined strength, fame, and status. Heroic achievements, promotional speeches, and attendance at events can all effectively enhance brand awareness. Queen Maeve hesitated for a moment before adding, and then there are the romantic rumors among the heroes. Los couldn't help but look at Queen Maeve, the woman who had once been rumored to be in a romantic relationship with Homelander and whose popularity ranked among the top 3 of the 7. However, recently the two seemed to be showing signs of breaking up and severing ties. Queen Maeve, holding her wine glass, suddenly seemed lost in thought, glancing out of the corner of her eye at the ballroom of the upscale bar. Los glanced at her, she was a very beautiful white woman. Correct. He suddenly remembered that this woman seemed to be a lesbian. No wonder, all those previous rumors about her relationship with Homelander were just an act to boost her fame. And many more. A casual glance from the corner of his eye, coupled with his awakened supervision, allowed Los to see a high-rise rooftop across the street outside the bar. Under a bright moon, an American flag cape swayed in the night breeze, and a male figure stood atop the railing, looking down at the two people inside the bar, as if listening to their private conversation. Those are people from the motherland. Los remained calm and pretended not to see anything, shifting his gaze away. Was the other party targeting him? Los felt that it didn't seem like that. The task Homelander had given him following the locomotive was more like a test for his entry into the job. As for tonight, Homelander seems more like he's here for Queen Maeve. Los looked at Queen Maeve. At this moment, Queen Maeve seemed to recall something unpleasant. Her eyes, slightly glazed as she drank, prompted. Los, you'd better not get too close to Homelander. That's a bad thing. Los's heart skipped a beat, but he couldn't bring himself to remind Queen Maeve in front of Homelander. He thought for a moment, then asked, why? Miss Maeve, what is your opinion of Mr. John? Queen Maeve commented, arrogant, aloof, and dictatorial, serving him is like walking on thin ice, no one can get close to his heart. Very well, Ms. Maeve, you have found a way to die. Los sighed inwardly, but he knew that Queen Maeve had given him this advice tonight specifically for the sake of the newcomer. On the plane, Queen Maeve indirectly saved his life. Since that's the case, Los has no choice but to find a way to salvage the situation. You're wrong, Miss Maeve. Ross took a sip of his drink and said seriously, I think Mr. John is very pitiful. Shut up. Queen Maeve suddenly opened her eyes wide, as if she had just sobered up, and quickly looked around in a panic. She couldn't hide her terror and whispered, do you know what you're saying? If this gets back to the ears of our own people. Los said seriously, I know that even if Mr. John were here, I would say the same thing. Mr. John is born with absolute power. Ordinary people, and even superhumans, all revere him and treat him as an anomaly. Isn't that pathetic? Los sighed and said earnestly, if Mr. John doesn't want to be seen as an outcast or a monster, then he has no choice but to become a god. He has no other option. He clenched his fist and swung it forcefully. Regardless of what others think. As members of the Super 7, and Mr. John's partners, if Mr. John wants to become a monster, then we must become monsters too. If he wants to become a god, then we should follow him. After all, Homelander and Mr. John are not at fault. If anyone is at fault, it is the world, not him. Los's words were serious and forceful, leaving Queen Maeve stunned and speechless for a long time. Outside the bar, under the hazy moonlight of the night sky, a man draped in a national flag cape stood alone on the rooftop of a 100-meter-high building, his fist, which had been clenched tightly because of Queen Maeve's comments, slowly relaxed. He looked down at the bustling, vibrant metropolis, a place where he felt trapped and unable to truly belong, and fell into a long silence, only a few tears welling up in the corners of his eyes. It turns out, there are people in this world who understand him. 039 The chess player who controls the world. Deep within the soul's space. On the ruins of New York, which resembles a post-apocalyptic wasteland, Los is playing Go with the undead Iron Man. After these days of experimentation, he discovered that the soul space, to a certain extent, can change according to his will. For example, the chessboard and pieces that remain intact in these New York ruins were conjured by Los through his own will. In addition, Los discovered a very important point. That is, he must abide by the deal he made with the two undead in the soul space. Conversely, the same applies to Iron Man and Injustice Superman. Just like a contract, once one party's conditions are met, both parties must abide by the previous agreement. And so, when Los completed the conditions for taking control of Godotkin University last time, Injustice Superman was forced to redeem the deal, which granted him the Kryptonian physique with engineered genes. This also means that when Los truly takes control of the Black Robe world again, Injustice Superman will only be able to grant combat-type Kryptonian talents. When Los stands at the top of the world, able to traverse the universe, he can only search for the Marvel Universe from Iron Man's time. One link after another. This made it hard for Los not to suspect that the two undead elders might have ulterior motives. Of course, it's not very meaningful to think about these things now. Los has not even fully grasped the game in the world of Black Robes, let alone things at the top of the world or beyond the universe. What are you thinking about? It's your turn to log off. Iron Man, whose human body was almost fused with the nano-armor, sat on the ruined ground, holding a white chess piece, and urged. Los snapped out of his daze, picked up the black pieces, and placed them without even looking at them. Despite being a genius of a different era who learns quickly, Stark, without using artificial intelligence, could not outsmart Los, whose super brain was gradually awakening. Looking at the territory being besieged on the chessboard, Iron Man widened his eyes slightly, twitched his mustache, and waved his hand, saying, "Forget it, I'm not playing anymore. It's like playing chess with Jarvis." He seemed to have thought of something else to amuse him, and asked with great interest, "Los, which side will you choose to side with outside?" Ross knew that Iron Man referred to the Seven and the boys. Today, one of the boys' members, Breast Milk, asked him to help investigate intelligence about Locomotive and Compound V. At the Seven's meeting, Homelander asked him to assist A-Train tomorrow in dealing with the issue of being targeted by the boys. Furthermore, Los could clearly sense that this was Homelander's way of putting him through the job. No matter how much you gain the trust of the people of your motherland, they will always prioritize their own interests. It's of little use to him, even if he fawns over someone like the Deep Sea, he's nothing more than a loyal toy fish. If Ross wants to solidify his position in the Super 7, and even turn around and guide Homelander, he must first prove his worth. They help both sides, yet they don't help either side. Los smiled slightly and erased the chessboard from the soul space. On the Seven's side, Homelander sees himself as a dictator, in charge of everything at Vought International. On the side of the boys, Butcher also considers himself the absolute leader and will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. There are no good people, everyone is a bad guy. So, Los will turn around and use them as pawns until he achieves the final chessboard of controlling the black-robed world. Behind the soul space, inside a prison shrouded in the radiation of the red sun, Injustice Superman quietly raised his eyes, watching Los's increasingly powerful figure, and began to awaken his superhuman strength. This kid is already showing signs of becoming a world king. Unfortunately, it's still far from being a true throne. The next day, in the morning, donning a dark, imitation black battle suit, Los met up with the Locomotive on a street in the detached apartment complex, as arranged by Homelander the day before. The Locomotive, which was also coming to join, could see the second-generation Black Los standing next to the road sign from afar. He thought of his buddy Deep Sea's experience yesterday, and now this second-generation Suans was clearly a supervisor planted by the Homelanders. The Locomotive felt a surge of dissatisfaction and couldn't resist the urge to tease Xin Suans. It's also a show of force. Then, the Locomotive didn't slow down, instead, it sped up faster and faster, moving like lightning at supersonic speeds. Almost instantly, he ran across the road next to the new Black Los. But, just as the two brushed past each other, suddenly, the train engine got goosebumps. It was the second-generation Suans, who had been standing there blankly waiting, who suddenly turned his gaze in his direction. At high speed, the two, both wearing goggles, seemed to briefly meet each other's eyes. Real or fake? The locomotive froze, then staggered, and tumbled down the road ahead. From an ordinary person's perspective, the locomotive seems to appear out of thin air. Driven by immense inertia, the black man's body tumbled at high speed for 20 or 30 meters on the highway before finally coming to a stop after crashing into a large tree on the side of the road. The leaves fluttered down, startling a few small birds into flight. The locomotive was bruised and battered, its body felt like it was falling apart, and it lay on the grass for a long time before it recovered. At that moment, a black combat boot arrived nearby. The second-generation black-clad man kindly reminded him, "Mr. Locomotive, sleeping is not allowed here." The locomotive, still lying on the ground, twitched slightly at the corner of its mouth. The second-generation Suans quickly adopted a look of having learned something, exclaiming in surprise, "Wait, could this be a special morning exercise method of the older generation of heroes?" Locomotive. He still preferred the silence of a generation shrouded in darkness. "If you can't speak, it's best not to speak at all." The locomotive took a deep breath and then did a few push-ups on the ground. He endured the pain, leaned against the damaged tree to his feet, his dark face serious, and said in a forcefully relaxed tone, "Newcomer, Suans, as a newcomer, you still have a lot to learn." The second-generation Black Los gave a thumbs up, saying admiringly, "As expected of you." The locomotive looked at the second-generation Black Los, its gaze falling on the opaque, jet-black goggles. Just now, it must have been a coincidence. His super speed is as fast as lightning, and even ordinary street cameras have difficulty capturing his full speed. Moreover, this is a newcomer who can only appropriately enhance himself and objects. Los asked, "Mr. Locomotive, could you tell me about your situation? I need to know what my specific mission is." "This." The locomotive hesitated for a moment, then, thinking of the Homelander behind Suans, he still gave them the information. "The matter is actually very simple. This means that the locomotive has recently been injecting Compound 5 to achieve faster speeds. However, a group of mysterious people are investigating something through Compound 5 found on his girlfriend." After listening, the second-generation Black Los nodded in agreement. The mysterious figures the locomotive refers to are the breast milk, the butcher, and others. Aside from the Invisible Man's accidental murder, this was actually the first clash between the Seven and the boys. 040 Enhance the Iron Man hacker, Game of Thrones. Where has your lead gone so far? The second-generation Black Los asked the locomotive. Clue. The train engine frowned and said, "I got a picture of one of them from the security camera footage at my girlfriend's house." He pulled a photograph out of his specially made blue battlesuit. The photo shows a lean and capable white man in his 30s with a full beard. Los recognized him at a glance. "That's none other than French, the one who provides weapons support to the boys." Los asked curiously, "You're not planning to take this picture with you and search for people all over the place at super speed, are you? Or what?" The locomotive raised an eyebrow and asked confidently. Los was speechless. "Is this the Seven? Because of their superpowers, they solve problems by first considering their abilities and never using their brains. As the new enigma, Los pointed out, now that they've obtained information about Compound V from your girlfriend, where do you think they'll go next?" The locomotive froze, as if a flash of inspiration had struck him, and blurted out. "The Triads. The Triads are global criminal organizations, similar in nature to the mafia or drug cartels, involved in human trafficking, illegal gambling, money laundering, and more. Due to Homelander's covert arrangements, the locomotive was originally intended to transport Compound V to the Triads, and it also killed a black woman en route. Oh right, they must have gone to the Triads. I'm going over there first." Before the locomotive could finish speaking, and without consulting Los at all, it suddenly accelerated and disappeared into the road in the blink of an eye. He had ulterior motives. By going to the Triads first, he could also snag some of the Compound V shipment. Los watched the locomotive hurriedly depart, then calmly activated the network built into his suit and sent a message. Now that second-generation Black of the Super 7 has been strengthened, it's time to strengthen Hacker Iron Man. Only through give and take can checks and balances be maintained. The other side. The basement of a grocery store in New York City was also a hideout for the Triads. The members of the Boys Butcher, Breast Milk, French, and the newly joined Huey broke into the room armed with guns. The Butcher, wielding a rifle, shot and killed several criminals. Huey pulled 2 vials of a dark blue injectable liquid from a shelf in the grocery store. "This is it." Everyone's eyes lit up. "Finally, we've touched the core of the Vought Corporation, the secret of the existence of superhumans." But at this moment, Marvin felt his phone vibrate in his pocket as he breastfed. He took out his phone to check, and his expression quickly changed. With a stern face, the mother said in a deep voice, "Everyone, we must leave here immediately." "Why?" The Butcher and his men looked at the breast milk in surprise. According to their calculations, the local police wouldn't arrive so quickly. "Breastfeeding showed me a message on her phone, saying quickly, it's a warning message from Iron Man. He said we have to leave the Triad hideout immediately. The train will arrive here in 4.5 minutes. Iron Man. That top-tier hacker. The members of the boys were all taken aback. Although the hacker Iron Man stated that he would not join the boys, this potential ally has provided important intelligence on several occasions and has also passed the Butcher's test. The Butcher frowned, looking at the breast with a serious expression. You told Iron Man about our plan to attack the Triads. Absolutely not. Breast Milk immediately shook its head and replied, I just told him that we are investigating Compound 5 and asked for his support. Then how did he know we were in the Triads, and how many minutes it would take for the train to arrive? Huey gasped, looked around, and felt a chill run down his spine. The thought was terrifying. Could it be? At this very moment, are they also being secretly watched by the other side? The Butcher thought quickly and immediately made a decision. No matter what, we've got the goods. Let's get out of here right now. Wait a moment. French pushed open a closed door to the underground grocery store and exclaimed, there's an Asian girl being held in here. The Butcher and his men immediately went forward to investigate. In the dimly lit room, a ragged girl was lying on the floor, her hands and feet bound by chains. With disheveled hair and a face covered in grime, his features were obscured, but it was difficult to discern his exact appearance. One could only vaguely identify him as Asian. The Butcher pondered, they're probably girls trafficked from Asia by the Triads, one of their commodities. French suggested, shall we let her go? It's too late. Without any hesitation, the Butcher shook his head decisively, don't waste time doing anything unnecessary. The local police will handle it. The boys are not a righteous organization, they are an anti-hero team. Under the Butcher's cold-blooded orders, Breast Milk and Huey immediately left with Compound V. French took one last look at the girl. He sighed and left the scene with the others. A few minutes later, a male figure wearing goggles and a blue, tight-fitting combat suit suddenly appeared in front of the general store. The locomotive, staring angrily at the ransacked Triad hideout inside the shop, stomped its foot and sped away, disappearing from sight. Meanwhile, 300 meters away, the Butcher and his men hid on the balcony of a residential building, watching the locomotive appear and disappear rapidly. Huey couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, the intelligence was true, the locomotive really did come. The mother let out a soft hum and exclaimed excitedly, I told you, Iron Man is trustworthy. He's the best hacker I've ever met, bar none. French glanced down at his phone, utterly astonished. Not only did they find out where we were, but they even pinpointed the exact time the train engine appeared. Is this still hacking? Artificial intelligence can't be this good. The Butcher squinted. He had indeed underestimated that hacker, Iron Man. If the other party had been their enemy, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The Butcher quickly thought it over and made a decision. He said, Breast Milk. Ask Iron Man for an address and send him one of the vials of compound number 5 that we just obtained. Ask him to help with the research. The Butcher, Huey and French were both stunned. These 2 vials of compound 5 were obtained with great difficulty, risking their lives, and now they're just going to give away half of them like this? Iron Man, he's not an outsider. The Butcher said in a deep voice, if it weren't for their intelligence, we might have been intercepted by the locomotive. They would have been entitled to the spoils of war. He decided to actively recruit the hacker Iron Man and bring him over to work for them. Yes, the mother replied in one gulp. He is now a complete fan of the hacker Iron Man, only the most professional people can truly understand how amazing Iron Man is. As the 2 sides engage in a game of strategy, the second-generation Black Robe slowly walked into the Triad hideout, as relaxed as if he were strolling down a pedestrian street. Passing by a pile of corpses in a chaotic scene, I pushed open the door and entered the innermost room, where I saw an Asian girl chained up. He squatted down and asked with a soft laugh. Young girl, do you yearn for freedom?